It's the pre-show, everybody. Welcome to our early warning, our 10-minute warning before our Security Plus study group today. This is where we bring the team on. The chat room is here. We've got videos to check and screens and just to make sure everything's running prior to getting started. We get started at the top of the hour. For those of you watching on the replay, that is 10 minutes from now. And we are going to do all brand new questions for the first hour of the Security Plus study group. And then we have our after show where you can ask questions by going to the link right there and submitting your questions for the second hour, where we just sort of talk about things. These can be questions about technology. They can be questions about the industry. They can be questions about stories from the field, things we've seen in the trenches. It could be about something not technology created, if you would like. I don't know. You can ask really anything you'd like. And then I sift through those at the second hour, and we go through them to see what you're interested in hearing about. Hope everybody's doing well. We were supposed to do one of these last week, got rescheduled. Actually, I think I've always put this date has always been locked in for this month. So this might be the only bit of normalcy for my schedule in May, now that May is nearly over. Hopefully June won't be quite as creative with the scheduling. I think I've got it pretty well there, but you never know. Chaos can sometimes ensue, and then we have to move things around. I don't even think I've posted the actual dates for June yet in the event calendar. That will happen later today, tomorrow, somewhere in there. We'll figure out, hey, chat room, everybody's doing well. We are ready to do Security Plus today. I really just finished these questions a couple of days ago. There was that last week was just a blur. I was out of the studio. I was out of the office, so I wasn't able to get a lot done. But now that I'm back, we're now getting things accomplished. Except I'm noticing my tablet is not charging. This is one of those cases where you unplug it and plug it back in again. And magically, that's what works. There you go. Just like that. So simple. We've got some good Security Plus questions here today. So going well along those lines. How can you renew your CompTIA Security Plus certification? In the chat room right now. So timely. We were just talking about this on our Discord over at professormesser.com/Discord. And there's a lot of options for renewing a certification. As part of the YouTube video description of this video, there is a link in that description for a video I made on how to renew your A+ Network Plus or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. That might be a little aggressive. It might be more than few. It might be a few, but it's a day. You could technically renew it in a day. But there are other ways. There are many different ways to renew your certification. Taking a CompTIA exam, taking a third-party exam, doing types of industry-related tasks, such as writing a book, giving a class, taking a class. There's all kinds of things you can do there. And the one that really talks about renewing it in a few hours is CertMaster CE. So it's that CE product on the CertMaster side that will provide you with options for doing an online course. You answer all the questions right in the online course, and you've now renewed your certification. And you just keep answering the questions, keep going through the exams until you get it 100% right, I think is the way they do it. Haven't done one of those in a while. So, but I've got a video that talks about all of those, talks about the advantages and disadvantages of each of them, and then you can decide which is the best way to renew. You might have already done something that you can use to renew your certification. So there might already be something there. You should probably look at that video, or at the very least, really read through the CompTIA website. There's a lot there on certification. There's a lot there on certification. It's quite a read. Plan to sit down for a little bit to go through the whole thing. Hopefully I have taken everything and gotten it into its core form in that video, but you should always check for yourself in this crazy world of partial and incorrect information. Hopefully I'm as accurate as one can possibly be. One of the advantages of really having the research team that I have really working to make sure you get the best. And by research team, I mean me at night in front of the television. That's pretty much the way it works. That's how that works. Really, I say television, the console which I use for gaming is really a more appropriate term. But it was kind of nice to be out of the studio for a week, but it's also nice to be back in the studio a week. We, of course, love doing these live streams. And so I was having that expectation of having that live stream there. Malk is here. Hello, Malk, in the chat room. Thanks for being here. I hope things are good in St. Vincent. Has the season already started? We're getting a little bit of rain here in Central Florida during the afternoons as well. I have a sneaking suspicion we are in that mode now. We'll have to see if that's the way it works out. This is one where we're still needing a little bit more. Right now, I am in this weird gaming. The chat room's asking which gaming I am doing. Right now, I am in this weird mode where I'm flipping back and forth between Warframe and Diablo 4. I love a good shooter, although I'm horrible at it. Doesn't stop me. I'm fine with that. And then I also like that action type role-playing game, like the Diablo 4 and PoE and things like that. Path of Exile. Sorry. Haven't quite warmed up to PoE 2 quite yet. It's a different philosophy. Looks the same, but it's different. So that type of thing. I'm not a big GTA player, so not my gig, not my thing myself. I get it. I think it's cool. I like watching some of the clips. I like watching people play GTA, I think, more than I would enjoy playing it. For what, I don't know if that's good or bad. That's just how it works there. And really working through the details. Well, how do I find time to balance gaming? Because I get like an hour at night. I used to have these gaming sessions where you could just spend hours focusing on that game. No, can't do that anymore. I get an hour at night unless I'm tired, and then gaming goes to the side. It's tough. But when you're sort of running your own company and you're trying to make sure you're doing the right things, especially in this weird world that we live in right now where information seems to be very malleable, that's sort of how that works. Really working on that. Wouldn't that be great to have a Professor Messer Fortnite skin? I don't know if that would be good or not, quite honestly. Then nobody would be playing. Suddenly, Fortnite attendance drops. Gamers in Fortnite have disappeared after the release of the face cam. Well, we're getting there. You know, the face cam's here. You can kind of see it right there. There he is. That right there. We'll flip over real quick. Can we cut? Hi. How you doing? Good to see you. Thanks for being here. We will get there, though. This is the pre-show, so this is me making sure recordings are going down here. They are. The camera inputs look really good, so we're good there. Aux out. Do I not have anything on my aux out? Let's see. Nope, we're recording just fine. So recordings, there's a little tiny, can't really see it. There's a very small, you can sort of see the top of the LCD window that's down here on my bottom right. So I can see what it is recording. So that's what I was doing, was bending over and making sure that I could see that. There's so much to get through today. And having, we've got quite a bit of Security Plus to go through today. So many interesting security things going on right now. The world of security as it is constantly changing. It has always been constantly changing. It's always a race. It's always something being updated. It's always a new way of attacking. It's always a new way of defending. We're certainly seeing that most recently. That most recent couple of Microsoft patches were just enormous. And then we've got all these Linux kernel issues that have come up in the meantime. The implementation of an automated way to sift through and really go after vulnerabilities has changed the quantity, certainly, of security issues we're finding in software. Is it making us more secure? Yeah, probably. Yeah. But it is a lot. For those of you having to patch right now, it is a constant churn to go through all of that. So I feel for you. Make all of that happen. So we got a lot to go through. Oh, we got less than a minute left. We get this thing started. I sure hope I have the right things ready to go on this side. I think we do. I think we're in pretty good shape there. This all looks right. It's always good to make sure you have the right presentation. You know, oh, you know what? I don't have the right presentation. After all that, after all of my talking and being prepared and doing things the way that they should be done, did I do it right? Did not. Didn't do it right. So I'm going to have to move some things over, connect over, and get another thing and work through the other piece of it and really see if I can get my Finder going here. I've got a presentation, but it's on the other computer. We will make it happen. Do not worry. We will go over to that computer and we will connect to it. Let's see, that would be this one here. We got a lot on. There is so much that I need to get through to be able to work with this presentation. Let me work through that. Whenever I'm working through technical issues, there's always a list of things that I make, so I know exactly what to expect when we're doing this. But did I really do a great job with that? Did not. I did not. So we'll see if I can airdrop over my presentation. We have this big network. Everything's connected. We've got a big configuration setting. Did I have it ready to go? No, of course not. Of course not. That would make way too much sense. So let's do that. Let's send this one over. Let's share it. Let's put it on this computer. Can we airdrop? Sure we can. There's always a way to connect these days. So that makes me happy when we're working through that. I really don't want the iCloud drive. I really don't want to collaborate. I just want to airdrop it. That's the problem, of course, is when you start getting into, well, what do you click on? Where does that go? Where are the pieces of it? I hope everybody also has been looking at the security issues occurring around just these many and varied updates that have come out. I was looking at the Microsoft updates for this month. There were some really bad ones in there. So if you're someone who is also kind of looking through and protecting your network, it may not apply to you if you're just at home, but some of you that are in a corporation, enormous challenges lately. Make sure you have a look at all the ones that are coming out. I know we're well past that here in May. We're sort of at the end of May right now. But as we get closer to June, I'm sure there's going to be another big batch in June, don't you? It seems to be how things tend to go, is it tends to go up and down right now with all of the different things. So I don't know. We'll have to figure out if it really makes sense to keep doing it this way, or if we're going to move from something like once a month to something that might be maybe a little bit more often, which would be interesting too, I think. So we'll see. Okay, let us drop it over, everybody. We've got presentations also today as we are working through all of these. Let me see if I can bring up my presentations so that you can see them as well, and we will get started on the live stream. One of the things that as I am stepping through all of this, I'd also like to keep in mind, let you know and keep in mind that we will be doing our live stream for the first hour will be Q&A. And then in the second hour are questions and answers that you can ask me. You can put those in at your link that is on the screen. Go right there to view all of those. And let me get started here. Whenever some of you have been working through a lot of this, there we go. Let's go to my computer and connect. Now, of course, I have to remember my password. These are all the hardest parts, aren't they? Is connecting, and remembering the passwords. I have to figure that out myself. It might be easier just to do this. We're going to let it synchronize up for a moment. And move over some of these documents. Let's connect. Let's open up. There's always something going on. And go to connect to a server. Boy, there is just nothing that I move between these systems that will allow me to do that. So we'll have to make sure we can get in there to make that happen. All right. You know, one of the things I was working on prior to getting this going is some more Security Plus info. There's a lot happening now with Security Plus. We will talk about this as we get into the first part of this. But there's a lot going on right now. If you are someone who is kind of Security Plus centric, you've probably seen a lot of these. And I like because we're coming up on sort of about a year from now, this particular version will have finally transitioned out. And I think that will be a great time to look to see what we're looking at as far as training for the next 3 years. One moment, I am almost there with my study group content. This is one where I want to make sure I got the right presentation to you, or else you're going to see a bunch of questions that make no sense whatsoever. So stand by, please. This is May, and we will get this one updated in just a moment. At this point, it might be easier just to start a presentation on my screen and go with it from there. Maybe I can connect on the other way. Maybe I can connect from my computer over to the other computer. That might be the easiest way to do it after all. See if I can do that. See if it gets me there. Let's go to a server. I think I have a recent server I can go to, and we'll connect to it. Nope. Let's go to this one and recent server. Recent folders, recent servers. Perfect. Okay, we are almost ready to get started here. Settle in, everybody. We're going to get a presentation up and running here. We will have your details on the screen. I don't think this is going to sync quite as fast as I would like it to. So I might be able to put this one out on a different server and connect to it remotely, which might be the easiest way to do all of this for all of us. If you are somebody who is also working through the CompTIA A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus right now, you might have also noticed that there were changes to the prices of vouchers, but it looked like it was only about a 4 to 5% increase, which is kind of their normal annual increase for these. So that might give you, you might want to think about that as you're planning your studies. If you thought it was one price, it did increase quite a little bit over the last month. So those are nice things that happen. Something to think about anyway when you're working through how much am I going to spend before I walk into this exam. I think that would be a good way to think about the things that are important when making your plans. Whenever speaking of plans, whenever I start worrying about getting to those plans, I'm always thinking about how much am I going to spend? And that is the challenge I always run into is I have planned it out, and then suddenly you get into it and there's nothing there. There's nothing to plan to. And that's always a bit of a challenge. Okay. Let's copy some things over. Did I copy it? I think I did. Yes, I did. And we could probably just start it here and move it over to this as we get further into the presentation. I think that's the best way to go. Let's start up our study group. Oh, it looks so good. There it is. See it come on the screen? I think that's a perfect way to start, and we'll get the party going here in just a moment. Let's flip this around. Whoop. Nice. And then hopefully we can make some of this happen. Let's do a live stream, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2026 Professor Messer SY0-701. That is our Security Plus study group. Coming to you live from our headquarters, we are going to all in this hour step through questions and answers that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And if you are very good at knowing what those are, if you've been thinking about things that are going to be important for this exam, these are going to be important tasks because they come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you are here live, we would like you to join along with us. The way that you would do that is you head over to this link, professormesser.com/QA. That is a link that is going to pop up information so that you can answer the questions live and in real time. We're going to ask you questions today. You'll be able to answer those questions, and we'll get to see how you do with some of the questions that we have here. Also let you know that as we are going through all of these different topics and thinking about the questions that we're going to pose, keep in mind that if you're watching this in the replay, that Q&A isn't going to be there. So you'll hear me talk about that link a lot. That QA link is going to be there quite a bit for this presentation. However, You won't have to worry about it if you're on the replay. That's only for the people that are here live. A good reason to be here live. Another thing you can think about. So if you would like to join us on that replay to answer a question, here is your question that can really see if you're getting in there to answer it. The question is, an organization requires isolation for its primary research database to prevent any possibility of remote exploitation from the internet. Which of the following technologies would be the best fit for this requirement? And we have a few options here. As you're probably aware, if you've joined us in the past, the way that you would answer these questions is you go to the link that you see on your screen. Do not put answers into the chat room, please. Also, please don't put any hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to use the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, so that you can answer which of the following technologies would be the best fit for this requirement. Would it be a VPN tunnel, trunking, air gap, port security, or NGFW? Now, this is a presentation. This is a question we did on our last month's study group. This is the only redone question you will see, just to make sure you can get in, answer questions, and maybe even see if you remember a little bit from last month. See how you do with this one. This question is one that I think focuses on a lot of information regarding how to protect systems. So all of these answers are part of the official exam objectives, but you have to make sure you really know what the appropriate answer might be. So make sure you have a look, pick the right one, lock in your answer, and we're going to see how well you do with this question in just a bit. Also let you know, thanks very much for being here. We'll come back to that question, but one of the things that we tend to focus, oh, by the way, I also want to mention before we go to that page, you may have noticed that if you are on our website at professormesser.com/live, you no longer have to go to that link anymore. You can just scroll down the page a little bit and you can access it there. Something new we're trying. I need to find better ways to format it on the page, I think, but I've already got some ideas about that. But see how that works for us. We're going to see if that works for the things that we're doing here. Thank you so much for being here. We do one of these Security Plus study groups every month. If you have not watched our Security Plus course, well, why haven't you? It is free. Every minute of every video is available for you to watch online. Simply go to professormesser.com/YouTube to join our YouTube channel, or you can see all of the index laid out on our website at professormesser.com. Of course, we have our Security Plus pop quiz question every week that we can send you in an email. You can get it on Twitter. You can, or I guess X as the kids call it now, as the company calls it now, Instagram, LinkedIn. There's lots of places you can find our daily pop quiz and weekly pop quiz questions. Another great way to keep yourself timely with these exam objectives from CompTIA. Also let you know that we'll be talking today about the latest Security Plus certification, which is the SY0-701. So that's another important thing to consider, is that this is an exam that was released in November the 7th of 2023. We estimate that it will probably retire around May of 2027. The important thing to think about now is that you are studying in May 2026. You've got a year before this version of the exam goes away. So if all of your study materials are marked with the SY0-701, you are studying from the correct content. Also let you know it's a single exam, unlike the A+, where you have to pass 2 exams to earn your certification. Not that way with Security Plus. It's a single exam, 90 minutes long. You might get a maximum of 90 questions, but you could also get fewer than 90 questions as well. The exam itself consists of multiple choice questions and performance-based questions, and we will talk in a moment what those performance-based questions are referring to. Of course, we have our entire course available for free on YouTube, but we have other study materials you can use as well. Our premium study materials are on our website. We've got our course notes, our practice exams, our exam hacks ebook, our success bundle, and others. They're all out there on our website. If you'd like to learn more, head over to our link, professormesser.com/701SB for our 701 success bundle. We also have this available as a replay immediately afterwards on our YouTube channel. I also create an audio-only podcast distributed version. And if you have a favorite podcast listening program that you like to use, you can add it by going to professormesser.com/podcast. You'll also find it on a lot of the very popular podcast sites. If you go to streaming sites like Spotify, you'll just search for Professor Messer. You'll find all the podcasts there as well. We want to make sure you have access to all of this information as you go through your Security Plus studies. Also, you'll notice on our YouTube video description, about a day after we're done, almost like magic, you will see the timestamp suddenly appear in the YouTube video description. It's not done by a machine because those are consistently incorrect. Instead, my marketing manager, Lori, does this the right way. She listens to what we are doing and she makes the marks. That way we know we're 100% accurate with the information that we provide to you. We always make our content of our video courses with humans. We make sure that this information is 100% accurate. And if it isn't accurate, you can tell me, and we can maybe find a better way either to describe what we're doing, or sometimes we update questions that maybe you feel should be a little more specific. Having that level of visibility and detail over our information, we think, is an important consideration. So think about that as well. Thank you, Lori, for putting the timestamps in. Thanks for watching this whole replay, probably at 2x. If only there was a faster mode. Wasn't there? We need a 5x on the YouTube replays. Something that would be ridiculous, but maybe not too ridiculous. We also have our chat available. When we're not here, head over to our Discord. Go to professormesser.com/Discord, where thousands of other people are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, and other certifications. We also have a lot of smart people there that can start answering questions. If you want to create your own room that you could bring people in and manage and study with other people, you can do that as well. It's all on our Discord. We'd love for you to join us there, professormesser.com/Discord. I will also remind you that eventually you will need to take your A+ exam. And when you take your A+ exam, there's a cost associated with it. The problem there is cost. The problem there is money. If we can only help a little bit. Now, certainly you can go out to the CompTIA website and pay full price to take your exam, but why would you do that if you were in the US or Canada? Because I have discounted vouchers available on my website. The cost of the voucher covers all of your costs for the exams, and every single one of them is discounted over the price that is on the CompTIA website. So something that can save you quite a bit of money when you're looking at purchasing all of those individual vouchers. Not only that, I give you something you can't get anywhere else. It is my exclusive CompTIA Exam Hacks ebook, where I've taken a number of tips and tricks that I've learned through the years when taking these exams, and I put them into ebook form so that you can download and see the same tips and strategies that I use, in some cases during the exam, to perhaps get you a few extra points. That's something you can't purchase from our site. It's only available with the purchase of a voucher or the purchase of one of our success bundles. So that would be another nice thing to have. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers to learn more about our voucher offering there. Of course, you can buy any of the CompTIA vouchers there. Even if we don't have a course for it, you can still save money. professormesser.com/vouchers. So let's go back to the question I asked earlier. Let's see if you got it right. The question was, an organization requires isolation for its primary research database to prevent any possibility of remote exploitation from the internet. Which of the following technologies would be the best fit for this requirement? Would it be VPN tunnel, trunking, air gap, port security, or NGFW? Let's close our poll and see how we did. 63% of you say the right answer is an air gap, but nearly a quarter of you said VPN tunnel is what you would need to use. It drops off pretty dramatically after that because of numbers. Port security at 6%, 5% say a next generation firewall, and 2% say trunking. So really it's between our top two. Air gap has such a big lead. I think we can pretty much call it the winner here, because that's the correct answer. An air gap would be the technology best fit for this requirement. Well, that's because one of the best ways to provide security is to cut the wire. Have no wires and no connections between devices. That's really good security, by the way. We refer to that in practical terms as an air gap. Air gaps are exactly what we would use to be able to make this happen. And if you're someone who's been working in a technology where you've needed to provide an ultimate level of security, then this is the way to do it. When they're not connected, there's no way to send information from one device to another. So that's really the important part of this, is really considering what we need to do to be able to provide this level of security. And so this way, we couldn't even, you'll notice there's no management connections between these devices. There are no trunks between these connections. There's no link whatsoever. So there really is, if assuming there's no wireless network connectivity between these two, we really have created a gap in the air between these two components, thereby keeping devices, customers, information separate on both of these. And really, this is the ultimate security control because you can't somehow find a way because you're not physically connected. Air gap is exactly what we were looking here because we were looking to make sure that there was no possibility at all of any kind, any possibility of remote exploitation. A VPN tunnel still has the opportunity for someone to gain access to that VPN tunnel through the use of authentication. So maybe they use your username and password. They're on the VPN tunnel. Now they have access to that research database. A trunking is another one because you have a physical connection between switches that has multiple VLANs across it. If anything, trunking makes it absolutely enabled for any type of communication, including communication that would be remote exploitation. Port security would not be the choice. Port security makes sure that only a particular device is able to connect to an interface. And in some cases, port security is something that may be configured wrong or may be able to be circumvented. And lastly, a next generation firewall, although is an excellent security control, not always the best choice for preventing all connections between devices. If that's the case, why are you even connected to the firewall at all? An air gap is the ultimate control. It absolutely prevents possibility of this. So air gap is the type of connection that we were hoping to see, or lack of connection that we were hoping to see here. And maybe that's given you a good idea of options that you might be able to use when security is your ultimate concern. How are you able to make that happen? Air gap is exactly the answer. 63% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. As I mentioned earlier on the exam, you have the choice, or you will be given multiple types of exam questions, really two different styles. Well, many different styles, but under two different categories. There is, of course, the multiple choice question, just like the one we have here. There is a question on the screen, and there are multiple options to choose from. We have them all listed here on the screen. Now, you had a 20% chance of getting this one right, even if you didn't know what the answer was. So CompTIA has a certain number of questions they give you at the beginning of your exam that are not multiple choice because they don't want to make it quite so easy for you. Instead, the questions, or the first handful of questions you get on your exam, will be questions that CompTIA refers to as performance-based questions. Performance-based questions are quite simply anything that is not multiple choice. So we have multiple choice and then everything else. And everything else, performance-based questions. Performance-based questions can be fill in the blank, matching questions, drag and drop questions. It could be putting things in a particular order. It could be solving a problem on the screen. Any type of way to ask a question could potentially be a performance-based question. And I think people get concerned about that because they're worried that they can't study for something that is unknown. And obviously that's a challenge, but it's not really unknown, is it? The questions themselves come directly from the official exam objectives that you've been studying this whole time. So don't worry about how they are asking the questions. If you know the exam objectives, you're going to be able to answer these without a problem. Let's do a performance-based question. We'd have a new performance-based question every month. And of course, we have a new performance-based question this month as well. This performance-based question is a bit of a matching question. We have 5 different tasks, and I also have a number of different devices, and I want you to match the best device to the task. So let's go through all of these and see if you happen to know what you think the right answer is. Let's first step through all 5 of the tasks that we would like to accomplish. So this one is use a controlled environment to examine network attacks. Which one of these 7 or 8 different devices, things, choices should we use for that one? The second task is block all known vulnerabilities before they enter the network. Task C is users are blocked from installing certain apps on their tablets. The fourth task is a new product release is doubling website visitors. And the last one is a report shows a large number of authorization failures. Now, we want to associate one of these devices or things with those 5 options, and those are a proxy server, sensors, access point, IPS, honeypot, load balancer, web application firewall, and MDM. Some of these different devices could be used for a single task, but notice the question asks, select the best choice. And this is an important thing to consider, is that some of these security devices we're doing do have functionality that tends to overlap between these devices. And you have to make a decision. Do we use this device to perform that function or this device to perform that function? Well, you need to think about, as you go through this, which one would be the best choice. And it should be relatively obvious. I tried not to make it some type of objective conversation argument that we would make. Instead, I tried to make it relatively obvious. If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen to answer. Go to professormester.com/QA to lock in your answer. Should be a good one to step through. This is also, by the way, a good way to test yourself to see if you really know all of these. Also, let me comment and make a note on this. Notice there are 5 different tasks, but there are 8 different choices, which means 3 of these will not be used. This is very normal on the exam, by the way. CompTIA tries not to make it a one-to-one relationship because this is harder. Effectively, that's really what they're doing. This is a much harder way to do it because you could now get all of them wrong because there's so many different choices to select in this list. So make sure you select the best option for the task. And of course, only one task will be associated with one of those devices. It's a one-to-one. Things are left over at the end. It can be kind of a challenge when you start looking at that too. If you're someone who is trying to find the right configuration, you're trying to manage the network, add more security, you're fighting with budgets, you also have other functionality you would like to do, this is a bit of an issue. Notice also, if you do the math here, it's very possible you could get 4 of these right and 1 of them wrong. There's no way to break it down because there's so many different choices to select from. In that particular case, CompTIA has listed on their website that you could potentially be graded with partial credit with these performance-based questions. They've also said you might not be graded with partial credit for the performance-based questions. So the answer to that is we don't know if you will really get performance-based questions as partial credit or not partial credit. We just don't know, and CompTIA is not telling. So in fact, there's no way to know once you get your exam results either. So it's one of these mysteries that none of us will ever know. How did the universe appear? What is going to happen into the future? Does CompTIA provide partial credit on their performance-based questions? These are mysteries of the universe that we will quite simply perhaps never know. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's step through each one of these and see what I chose for the answer and see if it agrees with what you think the right answer might be. The first one on our list is use a controlled environment to examine network attacks. This is a lot of fun too, by the way, this particular task. This is one where, wouldn't it be nice if we could watch the attackers in real time come onto our network and start going through different tasks and techniques and scripts and processes? What are they doing? What are they attacking? What are they trying to go after? What are they really doing? One of the best ways to do this is to use a honeypot. A honeypot is designed to look like a real network, feel like a real network, even have data on it like a real network. And the idea is that the attackers would not be able to know that it really wasn't a real network. This gives us a chance to get them into this little working petri dish of networking and really watch what happens at that microscopic level with that particular attacker. A very fun thing to look at as well. This is not something you should put on your normal network. This should be very well designed and configured to be completely separate from your network. This is also a good way to determine what are the attackers doing these days. A lot of great blogs out there and a lot of great videos out there about people that have a honeypot and they monitor and provide reports on what they're seeing in the industry just to see if we're able to make that happen. One of the next steps on our list is block all known vulnerabilities before they enter the network. That is IPS all day, every day. An intrusion prevention device. One of the keys with this one is that it is a known vulnerability. Most intrusion prevention systems work with a set of signatures, a very, very large set of thousands and thousands and thousands of signatures. And those signatures are able to find those known vulnerabilities and block them before they ever enter the network. Another nice part of this, if you're ever in the world of networking and you're ever trying to work through blocking things, intrusion prevention is a great way to do that. So have a look, see if this makes sense for the things that you're trying to block on your network. IPSs do certainly much more than just blocking vulnerabilities, and many IPSs go beyond the idea of a set of signatures and have more heuristic functionality. I think we'll start to see a lot more of that as time goes on. But this is one of those that IPS really is the best fit for that particular answer. Next on our list is users are blocked from installing certain apps on their tablets. This might be for a good reason. It might not be for a good reason, but you've probably seen situations like this at work where you're trying to do things on a tablet and you're not able to use the camera. You're not able to install an app. You're not able to change the authentication on that device because that organization is using a mobile device manager, an MDM, where the administrator of those systems can push down policies to allow or prevent you from doing certain things on that device. And in the case of a customer or a company-owned tablet, companies get to decide the type of security that they would like to provide. And maybe they've decided to prevent any problems with untested or unknown software somehow allowing someone to gain access to data on that system. And we're just going to block it. So you can't install anything but we've already approved. There might be a process in your organization to have additional apps approved. So you might be able to submit your app, have someone else provide that, and be able to get that app enabled. However, blocking it is a very common thing on many networks, and it's a mobile device manager that provides that functionality. Next on our list, a new product release is doubling website visitors. Well, good for them. They got a lot going on, but how do you maintain uptime, availability, and the security of those systems if suddenly you are overwhelming your web server? We need some way to maybe have multiple web servers and use them all simultaneously and balance the load between all of those systems using the aptly named load balancer. This is a common thing to use on many web servers so that you're able to take many, many people connecting to that system and distribute that load across multiple servers. So you set up identical servers, and then it doesn't matter which one of those devices people are connecting to. We've got a load balancer that spreads the load between all of them, and all of your systems stay up and running. They stay responsive. More importantly, stay secure. Because many times a denial of service, that's certainly a security issue. We don't want that to happen either. Should be a good one on this. Next is option E. A report shows a large number of authorization failures. Well, how would we know that we had a large number of authorization failures given the list of devices there? Probably because we had some type of sensor that was gathering those details and providing it to the reporting tool. This is a great way to get both a proactive and a reactive perspective of what's happening on the network. You can get immediate alarms and alerts. Maybe when somebody does not log in, maybe we're getting a breakdown of understanding the utilization on certain servers. Maybe drive space is not available. A sensor would be a great way to provide that information for the reports that we need to create. Well, that means we didn't use 3 of the options that were there. We did not use a proxy server. Proxy server is good for many things. It can even provide some type of caching that can still help. That might have even been an answer that you could slide in for option D, where you're doubling website visitors, but you don't tend to put an additional proxy server in place in that particular case, or these days even add a proxy server. Proxy servers, generally speaking, are not commonly used for network type security issues. Proxy server is kind of an older technology, been effectively replaced by next generation firewalls. But when you're trying to provide a balancing of the load or to be able to provide uptime for large types of network throughput, load balancer would be the best choice in that scenario. And lastly, we have access points. Not used any wireless type communication up here, so access points didn't appear in that list. And lastly, a web application firewall, which is really designed to provide network level security for an application. So you might have wanted to slide that in on the B side, block all known vulnerabilities before they enter the network, whereas a web application firewall is not so much interested in all known vulnerabilities, instead really focusing on an application level security for that particular device. So probably would not be the best choice for that piece of it. Also, web application firewalls don't tend to provide the authorization on a network. That's usually an authentication server for that. So in that particular case, web app firewall probably would not be the right choice for that either. So this is where, if you're someone who is trying to look through all of the different devices that are listed in the Security Plus exam objectives, it's really useful to know what those devices do, but it's also important to know how would I use those? Because very rarely on the exam does CompTIA ask a direct question like, what does an IPS do? Instead, they'll give you a scenario like we've done here and ask you, what would you use in that scenario? A little bit extra step in the middle of the question. So they try to make it a little bit harder than simply a, is it A or what is A? And you answer, this is A. Instead, they'll say, I have this A, it does a B. What C should I choose for that? So there's always an extra step in the middle, it seems, when you work through those details. Hopefully, that's given you some ideas on how you can focus on this particular set of challenges. And if you're somebody who is interested in learning more about those devices, they are all listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. And of course, we have a video that covers every single one of them in our Security Plus course. Let's now shift gears back to a multiple choice question. Feels better already, doesn't it? On our list of multiple choice questions, we have this one that asks, an administrator is configuring a new Linux server and needs to ensure it's protected from the start of the install. Which of the following would be the most significant step for keeping the operating system hardened? Would it be disable the password complexity policy, apply security patches and updates, install a third-party web browser, enable port 23 for management, or install a device certificate? Some of these things you might want to do anyway. Some of these things you might not want to do as part of your hardening process, but you need to find the right answer for the task that's been laid in front of you and make sure that you answer with the best choice for this scenario. If you think you know the answer, please submit it by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room, although you're doing very well along those lines at this point. Thank you so much for that. But now we have to really determine the best choice for all of this and figure out where we would go with these questions. Some folks in the chat room were thinking back to these questions in our performance-based question about authentication failures. I didn't ask you for authentication failures of a web application. I asked you for all authentication failures. That's why a web application firewall would not be the best choice in that scenario. What about Windows authentication failures? What about authentication failures on your mobile phone? What about authentication failures on a VPN concentrator? So that's where web application firewall, not quite what we were looking for. We needed it. Certainly a web application firewall keeps track of that particular application's authentication failures, but that wasn't the question. I wanted the best answer. I will warn you, that's a very common scenario on the exam, which is why you may be thinking that's a little cheeky there, Professor. Well, it sort of is, but I'm not the one that came up with it. I'm preparing you for the cheekiness that is yet to come on your actual exam and working through those. Let's see how you did with this one. Speaking of cheeky, an administrator is configuring a new Linux server and needs to ensure it's protected from the start of the install. Which of the following would be the most significant step for keeping the operating system hardened? Would we disable the password complexity policy? Would we apply security patches and updates? Would we install a third-party web browser? Would we enable port 23 for management? Or would we install a device certificate? What did you choose? Let's find out. We'll close our poll. Big numbers, 77% said the answer is to apply security patches and updates. But another big number, 17% of you, say you would install a device certificate for this one. Then we have single digits for, well, practically everything else. The certificates was an answer, but we have 5% for enable port 23 for management. 5%? We will talk about that one as well. 1%, a tie for last place, is 1% for disable the password complexity policy and 1% for install a third-party web browser. So in this case, when you're trying to harden a system, you're trying to make it much more difficult for an attacker to gain access to this device through the use of some type of vulnerability. And one way to do that is to limit the number of open doors and windows, basically the attack vectors on that particular device. This applies to all operating systems, applies to all devices, applies to really anything connected to the network. And one of the best ways to prevent an attacker from gaining access to a system, especially a system that you have just installed, is you apply the latest set of patches before you connect it to the network. That's right, before you connect it to the network. That's because there are vulnerabilities in many operating systems that are inherent in the base system that can be accessed across the network. And speaking from someone who has actually done this, taking a completely normal installation of Windows, a basic original Windows installation file, and installing Windows on a live network will have you, especially a network directly connected to the internet, could have you infected in a matter of minutes, maybe even less. So this is why we tend to make sure before we ever connect this system up, we make sure we harden it. We provide as many patches, updates, everything we can. We make sure that the accounts that we're putting on that system have a minimum password length so that you can have up to at least maybe 8, 9, 10 characters. Make sure they are complex passwords. Make sure we put limitations on these accounts. Not everybody gets an administrator account. Not everybody gets a root account. We also have to make sure that we have controls within our firewalls and networking systems to only allow access from those devices which have been specifically enabled to access those systems and nobody else. And of course, we need to monitor those ongoing using our sensors, using our security software, using every possible way to know what might be going on. Of course, the answer is going to be to make sure that we have security patches and updates, especially on a brand new operating system that we are installing. Now, what about these other options? For example, we have 17% of you that said you should install a device certificate. That's how you can keep this device hardened. Device certificates are added to a system so that you can verify that that system is one that is trusted. As we've mentioned many times in the Security Plus course, trust is the foundation of security. And knowing across us, you may have thousands of computers that are spread across the world. How are you supposed to confirm that the device you're connecting to really is one that has that is trusted on the network? Well, that at least gives me a level of trust, but the trust doesn't mean that the system is secure. It doesn't mean that it's even been patched. It doesn't mean that it's running the latest version of software. We have no idea. All we know is that our system, that it's not some random person connecting to the network. Device certificates are very useful for that, but they're only one part of that layered security that we're talking about. And the certificate itself doesn't provide any additional security controls. It only allows us to confirm that that device really is the one that is associated with our organization. That's the level of trust we can at least put to that level. You would need other security checks to make sure the latest software is installed, that the latest applications are up to date, that the accounts that are on the system are configured with the correct configuration. That's something that is important, but in this case, device certificates don't provide any type of protection through that methodology. Now we have 5% that said enable port 23 for management. Really? Now, what is port 23? Anyone? It's Telnet. Port 22 is SSH. SSH, Secure Shell, of course, is the encrypted terminal communication very commonly used for management to a device. But port 22 is what you would be hoping for that. Port 23 Telnet sends all information in the clear. And as someone who comes from a protocol breakdown, a patch, being able to look at packet by packet breakdowns of everything going through the network. I love a good packet trace. I love looking at packet traces. I like analyzing packet traces. Yep, I'm that guy. That is something that is an important consideration. If you start to see a lot of port 23, you might be thinking, there's a big problem here. We need to make sure that we move those over to something that is much more secure. I love the folks in the chat room who love their telnet. Keep doing that, because you're making it way too easy for me to get into your networks to see what's going on. Instead of 23, you want to run 22, which is SSH, which is encrypted and certainly much more secure for management. 1% of you said disable the password complexity policy. Who needs complex passwords? We don't need any of those. Let's disable it completely. Probably not what you should be doing. Enabling the password complexity policy would be a good consideration for adding additional security and keeping the system hardened, not disabling the password complexity policy. And lastly, we have install a third-party web browser. What's the worst that could happen? This is probably one of the things that can really catch you, because where did that third-party web browser come from? Is that third-party web browser trusted? And in the end, installing an additional web browser in your system doesn't provide any additional security, doesn't harden anything, doesn't make your system more or less susceptible to an attack. If anything, maybe more susceptible. Yet another piece of software that we are installing on a system, that's a bit of a challenge too. Something you don't want to have on these types of systems. So as we are going through this particular question, I think all of us agree the answer is indeed apply security patches and updates. 77% of you got that one right, and you were spot on with the answer. That was the answer we were looking for. It comes from our video in our SY0-701 course. The number of the video is 2.5. That's the section of the exam objectives this is from. And the name of the video is Hardening Techniques. Let's do another question. I'm talking a lot on this one. We'll get through these, don't worry. The next question on our list asks, a user brings their personal laptop to the office and connects it to a wall jack. With extensible authentication protocol, which of the following describes the laptop attempting to gain access? Is this, let me take a sip. Losing my voice much faster this month. Would it be, is that laptop a radius client? Is it an authenticator? Is it a supplicant? Is it a gateway? Or is it an Active Directory? Which one of these would it really be? You have to think about this one too. A user brings their personal laptop to the office and connects it to a wall jack. Already I'm cringing. With extensible authentication protocol, which of the following describes the laptop attempting to gain access? Would that laptop be a radius client, an authenticator, a supplicant, a gateway, or an Active Directory? If you think you know the answer, I guess it would be good if I put the link on the screen. There it is. You can go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, or if you are at ProfessorMesser.com/live, just scroll down the screen a little bit. It's right there. Tried to embed it right there on the page. I don't know if that's good or not. You guys will have to give me feedback later on telling me if it's good or not. I should probably had a survey that we could put at the end. Maybe we'll do that as we get closer to this. The extensible authentication protocol is in the official exam objectives. Make sure you are at least familiar with the basics of how it works. That will be an important consideration and something you might get as part of your exams themselves. If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link on your screen, ProfessorMesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Let's see how you did with this one. Again, the question asks, a user brings their personal laptop to the office and connects it to a wall jack. With extensible authentication protocol, which of the following describes the laptop attempting to gain access? Would it be a radius client, authenticator, supplicant, gateway, or Active Directory? We'll close our poll. We got a rainbow. We got a little bit of everything on this one. We have 43% of you that say it's a supplicant, 31% of you say it's a radius client, 13% of you say that's a gateway, 11% say it is an authenticator, and then only 2% here say it's Active Directory. Nobody bit on the whole Active Directory thing. Well, let's have a look at EAP, the Extensible Authentication Protocol. Here it is. This is a very simplified view of how it works, but this is really the most common way that you would see this being used in many organizations. You have three devices, maybe the laptop that's used to log in. You have something in the middle. Usually you're connected to a switch that provides this functionality. And then you have an authentication server that's able to provide the authentication decision on your network. And when you first connect to the network, you're in the supplicant. You're on your laptop and you try to connect in a network that is configured with effectively what we're calling 802.1x or network access control. And that using EAP, you won't have any communication. And you might have thought you just plug into the switch and you're on the network, right? Not on this network because they've configured 802.1x, which requires you to authenticate before you're even able to talk on the network. That's a pretty secure network. That's how we really would like to see things done. So with no communication, the authenticator decides, well, if you're trying to get access, let's see, can you send me some information? Oh, sure. Maybe I'll send you a response to your request with my authentication details. Maybe I'll tell you that my name is James, and it then sends that information. The authenticator, the switch itself, sends that information to someone who knows, which in this case is our authentication server. This might be through the use of Radius. It might be TACACS. It might be Active Directory or LDAP that is being used to do that. And that's going to evaluate, is that really someone who should gain access to this network? Well, we need to figure that out. Does James have a password? I bet he does. Let's have you provide more authentication details. Here's my username. Here's my password. Make sure they're okay. If it's legitimate, ask the authentication server, hey, here's his credentials. Did he get his username and password right? Oh, he absolutely did get his username and password right. Let's now let him into the network so he can communicate back and forth and be able to access the resources that he needs. That's when the authenticator sends that back to me and is able to provide now access to the rest of the network, and now I can communicate normally. But I needed my username, my password, and any other authentication credentials to make that happen, and that's because I was able to use that 802.1x functionality where my authenticator was validating credentials with the authentication server that were originally set up and provided by my laptop, which is also the supplicant. So in the world of EAP and 802.1x, that is the term that we use to be able to decide what that is, the supplicant. And that's what the plurality of you chose for this answer. 43% of you got that one right. It would not be a Radius client. As you recall from that picture, all of the communication for the authentication is going between the authenticator and the authentication server. So the laptop's not even involved in the authentication part other than just providing a username and password. The Radius, the LDAP, the TACACS, or whatever is being used as the authentication protocol isn't coming from the laptop. It's coming from the authenticator and talking directly to the authentication server. That's why it would not be Radius client. 13% of you said a gateway. Gateway is not the term that we use to describe the laptop. So in this particular case, would not be the one that we would have in this particular scenario either. The authenticator is, in this particular example, was the switch in the middle of the configuration. Well, that's not your laptop, so that's not the answer to this question. And lastly, Active Directory. Only a few of you chose that one. Active Directory is obviously the Windows database that contains information on effectively everything on the network, not just the devices, the users, their logins, and a lot of other information is stored in the Active Directory database as well. In this case, if we wanted to describe that laptop, we would be describing the supplicant, and that is indeed the answer to this particular question. As you've probably already seen, we've gone through a lot of questions already, and we will go through more. Don't worry. I know we're getting to the top of the hour, but I wasted a lot of time at the beginning and quite honestly talking a little bit more than I normally do in this session, or maybe I'm talking exactly what I normally do. But you may have noticed there's a lot of information in the Security Plus exam. We have some authentication information. There's information regarding security policies. We've got details about security protocols. There are questions about connecting up different devices, and it goes on, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics. That is a lot to go through. And of course, I really do recommend that you go through our entire Security Plus course, 121 videos, 15 hours of information. you may not have time to go through all of them, or you may not want to go through all of them. In that particular case, you might want to consider having a look at our course notes. Our course notes are designed to provide you with a summary of everything that's in our videos. So if you're someone who is looking for information that's contained, all of the text, all of the details, all the graphics, all of the tables, they are in these videos. This is a set of my digital course notes. These, of course, are also available, here we go, in a physical form. They are identical in content, but obviously different in their delivery type. The physical course notes and digital course notes contain this table of content. And of course, as you're going through, you can see the tables, the text, all of the important graphics, all of these graphics that I've created through the years, everything that I built for this course. These are all original pictures, of course. These are all in there. In fact, there's my zero trust breakdown. Here's information about change management, asymmetric encryption, key exchange, and so much more. It's all in the course notes. This can be a great addition to your video course. If you're reading a separate book, it can be a great addition to that as well. And if you need something that's just a nice summary of everything you need to remember, now that you've watched the videos, now that you've read your book, now you've done your labs, now we really want to have one place to go that has everything. This is it. A comprehensive view, 96 pages covering every topic and every video that we've created for the Security Plus course. I dare you to find anything more comprehensive than what we have right here. This is a great way to also support the things that we do here. So if you like our video course, this might be a good win-win. Not only do you help what we're doing here, you also get a great set of course notes for your studying. You can learn more about this on our website. Simply choose the Security Plus menu and choose the option for the course notes, or go directly to professormesser.com/701CN. That's for our 701 course notes. Let's do more questions. I know we're going to do overtime today, aren't we? There's going to be a lot more to go through. Don't worry. We got you covered. I will try to squeeze in as many as we can conveniently do for this particular course. Our next question asks, a system administrator notices that outbound emails are being flagged as spam by external recipients despite being sent from an authorized server. Which DNS record should be modified to prevent these false positives? Would it be SPF, PTR, MX, DKIM, DMARC? Oh, this one's a good one. Some of you email folks out there, you knew that one immediately. You jumped right on it. But if you've not worked a lot with email, you may not even realize that just getting the email server is the easiest part of your job. Email server is simple to get running compared to all of these different DNS settings and configuration options and adding spam and preventing spam. And it can be sometimes overwhelming, but once you understand the basic technology behind it, it starts to get a lot more easier, which is pretty much the entire Security Plus course, isn't it? But email is an important one. Email continues to be probably one of the most important applications we're using on any of our networks. Even though we got browser technology, we've got these collaboration tools, we've got the Discords of the world. Email continues to be the leader in information exchange, it seems. It is a glue that kind of binds everything together. Obviously not the only communication method you will use, but it is so easy to get running. The hard part is making sure that spam isn't being interpreted as being sent from your network, which is the scenario we have here. It's also a challenge to keep the spam out of your network. How do you do that? Well, a lot of the technologies we're looking at on this screen is exactly how we would do that. If you think you know this one, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. It's right there on the screen. If you want to answer the question, or go to professormesser.com/live, just scroll down the page. Don't even have to go anywhere. It's on the same page that you are. Try to make that as easy as humanly possible. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a system administrator notices that outbound emails are being flagged as spam by external recipients despite them being sent from an authorized server. It's not spam. It came directly from us. Why do you think it's spam? Which DNS record should be modified to prevent these false positives? Would it be SPF, PTR, MX, DKIM, or DMARC? What do you think the answer is? Let's find out right now. Oh, another rainbow. More stuff going on here. Let's look at the The two top here are 33% say it is SPF, 28% say it is DMARC. We have 17% that say it's DKIM, 16% say MX, and lastly, PTR. 6% of you chose that particular option. So this is a case where you may want to look very carefully at the relationship between the different protocols and DNS entries that are important to have a well-honed email inbound and outbound system. You do not want to be automatically identified as spam when you are indeed not spam, which is really what's happening here. The best way to do that, one of the first things you should do, is tell everybody on the internet what servers are going to be sending mail for you. This can be a challenge. You may think, well, we just have one mail server at our office. That's the only one we would use, except you know that the marketing department uses a third party to send their email blasts because they send tens of thousands of emails every day, and they use a third party for that. Well, that's an authorized server as well. Okay, well, that's important to know. Oh, we also have alarms and alerts coming from a private mail server that we use for internal purposes. Well, we don't want those marked as spam. So we've actually got more than one email server sending mail out to the internet. Well, how do we tell the internet that all three of those are legitimate, but everybody else is not? Well, you would need to put that entry in your DNS through a sender policy framework protocol. This technically is a text record, a TXT record in your DNS server, and you would list out all of the mail servers on that single line. I only have one in this list, although my DNS now has multiple email servers on it. If you wanted to look at my DNS server at professormesser.com, you're more than welcome to. You could search for just text records, and you can view all of the text records. I certainly have a lot there because there's a lot of chaos in my life, so I like to have a lot of text records. And I have on my SPF protocol a number of different servers that I use for this. So this is super good to work through that. And that's why you, as the person sending the mail, has complete control over this. Nobody else can change your DNS record but you. And that's why this is such a great record to have correct, because somebody receiving your mail sees what mail server it was sent from and thinks, is that a legitimate server? I just got an email from Professor Messer. Was it really sent from Professor Messer? They look through the header of the email. They find the email server that sent it, and they compare that to this text record. Is it listed as one of these? Oh, this came from Mailgun. Indeed, Mailgun is listed as one of the senders for Professor Messer. This legitimately came from a Professor Messer email server. That's how we know that that's an authorized server to the rest of the internet. We knew it was an authorized server on our side. We knew it wasn't spam, but nobody else knew that. How do we tell them? SPF is how we tell them. A great way to go through the process of confirming that really, really, really is the right record. This is how it looks in the actual text file of the DNS. You might have kind of a web-based front end or a browser-based front end to be able to have that, but that's why it should be there. In fact, that's the only way to tell people that these are legitimate servers. Otherwise, how are you supposed to know? You receive an email from Microsoft. Did it really come from a Microsoft authorized mail server? How would we know if there wasn't an SPF record to tell us that? So this is one where we are querying back to the origin to effectively ask the DNS server, hey, I got this email. Did you send this or not? And it will tell you, yep, that came from one of our servers. We must have sent that to you. If it did not have a listing in an SPF record, then it did not, effectively to the rest of the internet, that did not come from an authorized email server. That must be a spammer. We are not going to use or look at that email. We're going to stick it in the spam folder because your DNS said, never heard of the email server. Very important consideration when you're going through that process. There are other records on here that we can think about. The other records that we have here, 28% of you said a DMARC record. A DMARC record is a record that makes a determination of what we should do with this. Let's say that we received an email from you. It failed the SPF. You do not, I've got an email from Microsoft, but according to this, it did not come from a Microsoft server. Say, Microsoft, what should we do with this? Because if it's pretending to be Microsoft, maybe Microsoft has an idea. Microsoft could say, do whatever you want. Microsoft could say, you need to stick that in a spam folder. Microsoft might say, delete it. Don't even put it in spam. Just get rid of it. Drop it completely. And all of those statistics are gathered by everybody receiving these messages, and they are rolled up to Microsoft, and there's a single report they can create that says, here's how many of these passed the SPF. Here's how many of these passed the DKIM, which is another option that 17% of you chose, which is a digital signature associated with that. That's providing a lot of security. And the DKIM that is there, pardon me a moment, the DKIM that is there is one that is really being able to provide not only did it come from my authorized server with my SPF, I've now digitally signed it, so you know it really did come from me. That's exactly what we're talking about in that scenario. Hopefully that's one you've seen before. I think I'm in the wrong place there on my big head there. Let's put me somewhere else on that screen. If you're someone who is working through these email challenges, there are so many to work through. I think I'm right there. There's so many of these challenges because you kind of have to make sure that your SPF is correct. You got to make sure your DKIM is set up properly with a public key. Already a challenge. You'll find a DKIM record in my DNS if you wanted to have a look at that. And then you have the DMARC also listed in my DNS that tells other people, if you get an email that says professormesser.com, do this with it. Most of the time, I think I've got my DKIM or my DMARC currently set to tell people do whatever you'd like with it, but I might want to change that in the future to be stick it in spam. If it didn't come from one of my servers, stick it in spam. We're almost at that point. I like to run my new email, and I've got a new email server I've been running for a bit. I like to run it for a little bit, get some reports that show me how many DMARC records are there, and that's one of the things we can do with this as we work through it. So that is the answers we were looking for. The plurality of you chose SPF, and SPF was the answer that we wanted. It would not be a pointer record. In this particular case, pointer record has nothing to do with external or authorized email servers. And when we are looking at questions about email, we often go right to a mail exchange record, MX. MX only determines where our incoming email server happens to be. It doesn't describe where our outgoing email servers happen to be. You can think of MX as the inbound. In many ways, you can sort of think of SPF as the outbound in that scenario. So that might be a good way to memorize those two, or at least visualize how those two are being used in this scenario. In this case, SPF was the answer that we were looking for. Pardon me. We also want to remind you that if you're watching this video for a continuing education unit credit, since we were talking about renewals earlier, one of the ways that you could do that, or one of the ways that you can earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU from me, is to follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us. In that Contact Us link, please put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put May 2026 Security Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, SPF, DKIM, DMARC. Ooh, 3 super secret code words of the month. So again, for those of you wanting to earn a 1-hour webinar category email from me, the way that you would receive that email is go to the top or bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address, in the subject line, put that it is a May 2026 Security Plus, and in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words, SPF, DKIM, DMARC. And it takes me about a week to turn these around. It took me a little longer on the last batch. I'll try to be quicker. But it takes me about a week to turn these around, and then you'll be able to receive a digitally signed email from me that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. You obviously can't use only webinar CEUs to renew your certification, but at least you've got some options there to be able to add on some others. If you're collecting CEUs for your certification renewal, that's something that might help you as well. I know we are past the top of the hour, but I've been talking so much this whole time. I was hoping to maybe fit in one other question. So let's do that. I think you can give me a couple minutes, since it took me a while to actually get a presentation going today. It's not like I do this a lot. I'm apparently incapable of making that happen. One of the things that you'll find if you go to our website is that we certainly provide our free video course. You can watch everything that is there. But if you were someone who was wanting to, well, I guess it would be good if I had the right thing there. There we go. We've got our practice exams here. It's maybe something you've seen on our website, because what I found when I started looking around the internet is I found a lot of practice questions out there, but a lot of the questions, I won't say most, but many of the questions I found were outdated. They didn't even have anything to do with the latest Security Plus exam. A lot of the questions were not written in a way that has anything that approaches what you would expect to see on the exam. And knowing the style of questioning on the exam is almost as important as knowing the answer itself. Some of these questions are written in a way that you need to really understand kind of the cadence and the style of what's expected of you, especially that it's not really the wording of the question, it's the style and the thought process the questions require you to think about. That's a more difficult test question to build, quite honestly. And lastly, I thought it would be good to have questions that had a similar style to the actual exam and that were accurate to the exam. A lot of the questions I found on a lot of third-party websites were just wrong. Wouldn't it be nice if you had a question that really, really had right answers, that were written by someone who knew the content, written by someone? A lot of the questions I'm finding out there these days aren't even written by humans. How can you expect them to be accurate to the exam with all of the hallucinations that tend to happen these days with AI-created questions? This is a part of content that really is important. So I wanted to give you a question from an actual practice exam because I have this practice exams book. Why not have a look? So let's do one. Let's do a practice exam from my practice exams book, shall we? This question asks, this is question A78. So this is in my first set of practice exam questions. We're obviously not going to do these online, but please don't put an answer in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. This is on page 26 of my practice exams book, and it asks, an organization's content management system currently labels files and documents as public and restricted. On a recent update, a new classification type of private was added. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this addition? Would it be a minimized attack surface? Would it be simplified categorization? Would it be expanded privacy compliance? Or would it be a decreased research or decreased search time? Not research, just search. So these are four of the questions, or four of the possible answers for the question that we are posing. And since this is provided as a PDF, you can even make notes if you're trying to really break down what the summary is or important topics that are in this. If you have a stylus, you can write on this. And of course, you can save it so that you can come back to this and be able to look through it. We want to make this as functional and available as possible. And as we start looking through the answers that are here, you may even want to choose the answer on this list. I have a list of the possible answers that are on our website at page 33. It actually tells you quick answer. If you just want to know, is it A, is it B, is it C, is it D? That's your quick answer page. That's where you would go for this one. But of course, we might want more than just a quick answer. What if you wanted a detailed overview of everything that was here? The way that you would do that is you would go to the details that are here, page 116. Well, I'm on page 26. How do you get to page 116? Do you just scroll? No. There's a much better way to do it because these are hot links. So if I click where it says the details, click, it goes to page 116. I don't have to scroll anywhere. That makes it nice. So here's the question right here at the top. And you can see that the answer is C, expanded privacy compliance. And I explained to you why that is the correct answer for this particular question. Now, another problem I've seen with a lot of questions on the internet is I will answer a question and I'll get it wrong. And it tells me why the right answer is right, but it almost never tells me why the wrong answer is wrong. If there was ever a time when understanding why the wrong answer was wrong, that was the time. So why isn't it giving me any feedback that's going to help me understand more about the topics that I'm faced with on the exam? Not so in my practice exams book. In my book, every single incorrect answer is documented as to why that one is incorrect. So you're getting immediate feedback. If you get it wrong, you understand why you got it wrong, and you can adjust your thinking towards what the right answer is. And perhaps more importantly, adjust your answer to the wrong answer because on your exam, you might get a question that covers one of these topics that were incorrect. So that makes it a pretty useful type of thing to be able to have that there. Now, if you read through the question and you had no idea what the question was talking about, there's a QR code right here and a hot link that will take you to the page that shows this particular video, because this question came from Objective 3.3 of the SY0-701 exam. The name of the video is Data Types and Classifications. And if you click that link or you use the QR code, you'll go directly to that video page and you can watch the video and then come back to the question. Oh, that's what the question was talking about. So there are multiple steps in doing this, especially in looking at the answer, that will help you gain a lot more information about this exam. So when you're done with this question, maybe you want to go to the next question on your list, except we're down here on page 116. How do I get back to where we were? Well, do you know that your PDF reader that you're using has a back button in it? It's right there in mine. Go back in page history. It will take you back to where you were. So if I go up to that and I click back, we're back to where we started. So now we can go to the next question on our list and just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again to really understand and see how well we might know the topics associated with the SY0 exam objectives. Those are my practice exams. Those practice exams book are available in both the digital version that you just saw, but if you prefer a physical version, we've got that as well. You go right to that answer page, just flip back to the page. The QR codes are still in it, of course, so that you can gain access to those. I know it's washed out. Can't really see anything there, but it's all in there and identical to what's there. That's why it's such a big, thick book. There's 3 separate 90-question practice exams in there. Every question has an answer. Every question and answer also details the incorrect answers. This is a good one to have if you're someone who is planning that last step of your studies to see if you really, really know that content. That's what you'll find in my practice exams. You can look at it online at professormesser.com/securitype for our security practice exams. Quite a bit to go through. Also tell you another great resource you might want to look into is this one. It's the official exam objectives. I've talked about these exam objectives constantly during this live stream. They are a valuable tool to be able to know exactly what will be asked of you on the exam. Every topic you will be asked is in this list. And the questions that you'll get on your exam stick to this list almost 100%, which means if you know all of the topics listed in the exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam. How can you not? You already know everything that will be asked of you. Those objectives are available on the CompTIA website, and they're free. What? They give you something for free? They sure do. And it is perhaps something you will not find anywhere else. If you go to professormesser.com/objectives, which I am doing right here, you'll come to my page that gives you links directly to the A+ Network Plus and Security Plus objectives. And I also give you a screenshot of the page because you may not realize you need to scroll down to this red box. If you don't see the red box, we have information here that says you may need to enable cookies, disable pop-up blockers, or remove other filters to see that red box. So that is a great resource. And if you have not looked into the objectives before, you may be someone who really needs to be able to break that down in a much better way. See if you happen to know what these are. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. That might be a good place to start when you first start your studies. It also makes a great checklist before you finish your studies and go to your exam. How can you even test yourself if you don't even know what's in the objectives? Because that's a question I get all the time. What should I really be studying for my exam? And this is my answer every single time. You should be studying every topic listed in the official CompTIA exam objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and download those for free. Super important to have those there. We do one of these Security Plus study groups every month, and indeed, we already have one scheduled for June. Currently, it's scheduled for June the 24th. Of course, we've got our A+ Core 1 on June the 2nd, A+ Core 2 on June the 4th. It looks like I currently have the Network Plus scheduled for the 18th of June, and June 24th is currently scheduled for the Security Plus study group. Why do I say currently? Well, if you're someone who's been watching our calendar in the last month, it's just been constant motion. It's been constant changing of dates and changing of times, and I apologize for that. Sometimes these things are out of my control. But I try to let you know that if you ever want to know when the latest update is, if I ever make a change, the very first place I change it is in my calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. That's where you go. That is the best place to go to be able to know what the next event is going to be. So if you're watching this video months later, just go to professormesser.com/calendar. Come join us live. We'd love to have you here. That's where we have the most fun. I think the chat room would agree. Well, although we are done with the first part of our study group, we're not done with the study group yet. We have our after show coming up directly after this. Stay exactly where you are. Stay on the same stream. We aren't doing anything else here and not really working through the details of this. Make sure you stay where you are if you would like to see what questions that you have. This whole time I've been asking you questions. This is your chance to ask me questions. Of course, you can do that from that same link we've been using before, professormesser.com/QA. Don't forget that when we're done here, I'll be over on our Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. We have our weekly security plus pop quiz questions on professormesser.com/X/Instagram/LinkedIn. And of course, our entire course is available on YouTube. We, of course, have our discounted vouchers for those of you in US or Canada. Why would you pay full price over on the CompTIA website? I can give these to you at a discount. It's exactly the same voucher. Literally exactly the same voucher you would get from CompTIA. You've got options for a single-use voucher or options to buy a voucher that has a retake option. So that gives you a little bit of insurance. They're all on my website at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, our Security Plus course notes are available on our website, our Security Plus Success Bundle, and so much more at professormesser.com/701SB. Well, this brings us to the end of our first hour, but we're not done yet. Stick around. We will be looking at questions that you have submitted in our after show immediately after this. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Okay, now it's time that I need to take a sip. What? Just need to get some beverage. Now the fun part. The part that I have no idea what happens next. The part where I have not planned, I have not arranged anything, I have not created any type of content for this. I've just sort of opened up the lines. And that's what we need to do right now is open up those lines. I need to move over on my side and have a look at the Q&A. If you would like to submit a question, you can do that at any time using the questions that we have on our screen. I need to close my poll. One moment, please. Let's hide this poll. And indeed, it tells you that you can submit questions at any time in the second hour of the study group. I will be moderating the questions on this side. So once you submit the question, nothing kind of happens. It tells you, thanks for submitting a question. But I will be able to list through all of the questions. We'll be able to pick the things that you're interested in, and maybe we have some answers of things you might want to know about. These might be questions associated with IT. They might be associated with getting a job. They might be associated with technology in general, or they might have nothing to do with that. You might have a cooking question, in which case you're probably in trouble when it comes to me, but I'll do the best. I think the answer is make a sandwich. I think that's pretty much my single answer for any cooking question you can pose to me. I can't do everything, people. And you really don't want me to cook anything for you, just so you're interested in that. That is definitely not my wheelhouse. But you do have questions that do ask other things in this. So let's do that right now. We've got in fact, if you go to that QA tab, I just wanted to show you on the screen, you have an option. There's two tabs at the top. You just flip over to the little chat bubble tab, which is our QA tab, and you could submit a question directly from that screen. So it gives you something you can work on there. Let's see what questions you've submitted so far. Some of these sometimes are pretty interesting. Sometimes they're embarrassing. Sometimes they're a little bit of both. We'll just have to find out what options you might have available on here as well. Some of you have some very detailed questions about this. Let's talk about sanity, shall we? Let's talk about keeping things balanced. And I think it's something we don't often talk about in the world of IT or certifications. I think the industry's changed a lot in the last number of years when it comes to a balance between what you do at work and what you do at home. And that brings up this question from Michael, who asks, Professor Messer, do you take breaks from your work, such as a simple disconnect to relieve tensions from work? You know, when I worked for other companies, when I worked for Network General, Network Associates, McAfee, Network, who did I work for? Palo Alto Networks. There's always a drive and a push and always something that needs to be done. This is kind of a normal part of really, I think, most jobs out there. Companies want to be sure that you are being productive, but they also want to be sure that you're someone who's going to be able to maintain that productivity over time. And I would say that the larger companies I worked for had a much better perspective on work-life balance. As I found smaller companies, they tend to have less resources available and therefore maybe tried to get technology people to be that 24/7 coverage constantly, which is almost debilitating. When you work all week, Monday through Friday, at the end of every day, you're going home waiting for the phone to ring. On the weekends, you have to take your phone with you. It has to have coverage. You have to make sure that you're able to answer the phone call. If that's your life all the time, there's no way you're going to stay at that position for any amount of time. You're going to burn out eventually. That's not something that most people are able to do. But in larger companies, you have more people. Maybe Tuesday nights, that's my night. Maybe every other weekend, I take one of those weekend days. There's more people to spread this around, and you can switch off with other people, and you have more coverage so that you don't have to worry all the time that you're going out of coverage. This past week, I did disconnect. I took a week off, which, by the way, never happens. When you own your own company, you have the flexibility of not working. But then again, your company, you're not doing anything during that week. So I did disconnect a bit during that time frame. In fact, I went to a part of the world where I didn't have any phone coverage. What? That's hard to find these days. So I went to a part of the world that literally had no cell phone coverage. It was phenomenal. It was fantastic. And it was awful. It was both at the same time. It was great and it was scary. It was great and it was not great. There is definitely a huge benefit there. And I did get to disconnect, and it was, I'm a vessel of love. It's very zen. You were able to kind of disconnect a bit. So I was able to set that up. And I think that's important for people, whether it's for an evening, just go out and get a meal with someone you love, go out and have a nice vacation, maybe a mini vacation on a weekend. I'm in Central Florida. We do this all the time. We go to a theme park for the night, go get a bite of food, go see an event, go watch the fireworks, come back home. It rejuvenates you. It makes you, I think, more, it is now easier to study because we're just not constantly in there. On the internet, we often say this in a very derogatory way. People say, go touch grass. You should go outside and touch grass. But you should actually. They're actually helping you. They're trying to be mean and they don't understand. They really are helping people when they say that. That's a good idea. I'm going to go outside and touch some grass. Let's go do that. Let's go shoot some hoops. Let's go for a walk. Let's go look for creatures. Let's go see with somebody who's walking their dog today. Let's go down to the beach. Let's go down to the outdoor mall and see what's happening. Oh, I heard there was a band playing here. Oh, let's go to that restaurant we've always been wanting to go to. Why not? You don't have to do something that's costly. Go just take a walk down the street. Go meet the neighbors. Go talk to people. Go see the kids playing. Go watch the adults doing something, playing bridge. Go watch them play dominoes. That is so nice to be able to have that downtime. I think it's an important thing that we need to put that in our schedule almost and say, we are absolutely going to do this. Especially technical people, we tend to focus a lot of our time in front of a screen. Here I am, most of my day. I commonly joke and say I only work half days, 8 to 8. Unfortunately, that's a common theme in our industry because we're in a room, doesn't even have to have a window. You have a screen in front of you or multiple screens. You're clicking on things. The day goes by sometimes very, very fast. You look up and suddenly it's nighttime outside. That is something that we'd have to be very careful of in our industry because now it's not healthy either. You're eating, but you're not moving, and you need to move. You need to have it's surprising how much just a simple walk down the street can do for your psyche, can do for your health, can do for your body. It's a win-win, I think, every single time. So that's always a good idea, and make that happen. Some people try to do this in their home office. They'll have a standing desk, or I hate those. I think standing desks probably should be illegal, but they're not yet. I'm not sure. I look forward to your hateful emails on that one. I just don't understand you people. How can you stand all day? How is that possible? I know it's healthier. You're just not going to convince me. I know it's better. I just can't do it. But I like the idea of someone who's able to move. They're walking, they're on an elliptical, they're in their Zoom meeting. I can appreciate that. I like that idea. So that is my disconnect. Those are the things I like to do. Maybe you have other things that you'd like to do, and I think you should consider that. It's an important part of making sure that you are as healthy as you can be in an industry that sometimes can be very unhealthy. I used to travel a lot, as many of you have heard before. I was a systems engineer for these companies I mentioned. So I've represented Network General, Network Associates, McAfee, Palo Alto Networks was the last one I had. And I was constantly traveling. I'm a million miles on Delta and a million miles on everything else. And went from, I was a road warrior. I got on a plane on a Monday. I would stay in hotels on Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, fly back on a Friday. I'd have the weekend at home. That's a tough job. That's a tough gig, and it can wear you down. And so now I kind of have the opposite. I thought, how can I create a company where I'm not on a plane? I'm not answering the phone. I'm not talking to people. I'm in sort of my Zen mode here. And you can do these types of things too. Once you learn more about these technologies, once you become experts in these niches, once you become a person who has more knowledge than other people around you, you become more valuable and you have more options there as well. So you've got a little bit that you can work through. You got a few things that might really, really help with that. And I think that's a consideration too. Think of yourself first. That there's no other more important thing than your health. And everything else needs to be secondary when it comes to your own personal self. So something to think about. Let's do more questions on this list. So here's a common question I get, and I'm glad you addressed this so that we can kind of talk to it. Javier asks, currently going through the course videos. Oh, you're not even seeing it there. Let's do this. There you go. Currently going through the course videos on Security Plus, and I've noticed there's a good amount of real world examples you give. Well, thank you. That was an important addition to the course many editions ago, because I think it's useful to learn about a denial of service and what that is. But has anybody ever done one? What did it look like? Who did it affect? What type of scope did it have? Understanding how these things manifest themselves in the world around us help us link our brains together with that particular concept. So I try to put those in the courses themselves. And I try to put them on every single very large video on these topics so that you can understand, well, why is it important to protect this? Because this can happen. Javier continues, can we expect there to be questions that ask us to identify the real world example of a certain vulnerability or attack? So I'm assuming Javier is asking about the certification exam itself. You go to the certification exam, you sit in the room, and then they will ask a question about a Cisco vulnerability or a Linux kernel vulnerability. They're going to ask about a specific Windows vulnerability. No, they're not. They're not going to ask you about them at all. I only put them in my course to apply context so that you can understand, has this vulnerability, is that a big deal? What does it look like when an attacker uses that vulnerability? Who is affected by those vulnerabilities? What type of things occur there? So we don't have those types of questions on the exam. In fact, if you look at the exam objectives, and I think we should, let's go to the exam objectives, shall we? That's why they're here. We got course notes. We got, there's the objectives. So let's bring them up really big. So on these objectives, as you go through, let's find the one for attacks. So I think there's some good ones on here. Here's some basics, threats, vulnerabilities, and mitigation. So here are some threats that you might run into. Things like phishing or vishing or smishing or impersonation. Those are social engineering type attacks. Then we've got these down here like buffer overflows and malicious updates and SQL injection. Well, what are those things? They're listed in here, but notice the exam objectives don't list in here what is the What was the company that was affected by a SQL injection attack in February of 2026? You're not going to get a question like that because they didn't put it in the exam objectives. But they might ask you about a SQL injection itself. An attacker has gained access to company data without having to authenticate to a database, and they were able to access it through the web browser. What was that? And they might give you 4 options. And one of those options is probably going to be SQL injection. So there's a good example of how we go through this process of trying to understand the topics, trying to break down what those differences are. And I try to give you a real world perspective of where we've seen these attack types and how they've manifested themselves. But I don't expect you to know that specific vulnerability or date and time because they're not going to ask that on the exam. So great clarification there. Thank you, Javier. More questions. Let's go through the list. Let's keep going down the line and have this here. Pardon me, a little congested there. Let's see if we can keep going through this list. There is quite a bit in this. There's great questions coming in, by the way. So thank you for that. Here's a really good question. And it's one that I could probably put in any words here and I would have the same question. This is from a perspective of what do I do? And I get this a lot. I get this multiple times a week. And this question specifically is, I'm not sure which one to go for. Do I go for Security Plus or Network Plus? Tell me, which one should I do? This is the horrible answer, by the way, of this question. The answer that I can give you is a definitive, I don't know. What do you want to do? What positions are available in your area? What do the employers for those jobs, what are they asking for? Are those jobs tend to be more security related? Do they tend to be more network related? So there's a lot more I need to know before I'm able to answer this question, but a lot of this information you're able to answer for yourself. For example, go out to every large company in your area and have a look at their webpage and the job postings that they have there. Find every job that you really feel you're qualified for and look at them. In fact, I have a video that is listed in the YouTube video description of this video on how to get a job in IT with no experience. A pretty basic title, but I tried to give you different things that you should consider when you walk in the door. And one of the things I mentioned there is you need to know what certifications are going to be important. One of those important elements you want to bring to a job is that you are industry certified. All right, but which one? There's 1,000 industry certifications out there. Well, the best one is the one that they want you to have. That's the answer to the question. It's not the one I want you to have. And in many ways, it's not even the one that you want to have. It might be. But one of the driving forces should be, what does the industry want you to have? What do hiring managers want you to have? What things are going to be important for that employer to consider you as someone who might be good for that particular role? And they might have listed in the job description, you should have a Security Plus certification. All right, decision is made. Or they might say, we want somebody that has a Amazon certification. Oh, didn't see that one coming. Let me go look over there. Or they might say, we want somebody who's Network Plus certified. But you don't know until you've done that research. You need to go out and list out every possible job in your area and start doing some correlations. Try to find out. Most of the jobs ask for Security Plus. If you are in the Washington, D.C. area, or you're part of the world where you're going to be working with a federal defense contractor, they will probably want you to have Security Plus. It's not even a question. They don't even care about Network Plus or A Plus. They want you to have Security Plus because that is a big push for the Defense Department for the U.S. federal government. Or you might be looking at a job in Dallas, and that particular position is really very network focused, and they might want you to have Network Plus. You know, those types of things happen as well. So it's hard. I can't answer the question. It's not hard for me to answer the question. It's impossible for me to answer the question because I don't know you. I don't know where you live. I don't know what jobs are available to you. I don't know your experience, and I don't know what employers want of you. This is approaching this question, of course, from the perspective that you're trying to either get a job in IT or get a better job in IT. a lot of people take these certifications and they don't do it to get a job. They just want to learn more about technology. Well, in that case, either one works. But really, I think a question like this is really approaching it as, from the perspective of an IT career, which one is going to be the best? And the best one is going to be the one that's best for you, best for employers in your area, and you're the one that's going to have to figure that piece out. I will give you all the tools you need to be able to put that together, but ultimately you're the one that has to do the work. You have to put together all of that data and see if you can figure out what makes the most sense. And maybe that either one of them is a good bet. Or maybe you look over the data and you realize, wow, a lot of companies in my area are really asking for Security Plus. There you go. There's your answer. You go get the Security Plus. See how easy that was? That wasn't easy at all. But it does give you a plan. It gives you a strategy. It gives you something you can work towards to be able to make an educated decision about what you might want to do. And in my career, I've made a lot of educated decisions. I've made a lot of uneducated decisions. So looking back, I think I probably should have analyzed that one a little bit better. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you take a jump, you leap off the cliff, and sometimes it's a very soft landing. Sometimes you coyote right into the ground. That's life. And you just pick yourself up and you go to the next one. And that's something that is difficult in the moment, but whenever there's pain, there's learning. And thankfully, there's a nice solid reason for the pain. And we can approach that. It's going to be very useful to think that out. Do your research, make the right decision, and you will be able to do that multiple times through your career. You will be doing that multiple times through your career to really find out what the best one is going to be. Let's talk about performance-based questions. This is from Martin says, hey, Prof, been stressing out about the PBQs that might appear on the Security Plus exam. I've been looking through multiple resources and interface topics. They're never consistent. How do you clarify what performance-based questions typically look like, and how should I approach solving them? Well, I have good news for you. There is no typical view of what a performance-based question might be. There you go. Problem solved. Glad I was able to help you with that. This is the thing about performance-based questions. The performance-based question is effectively a question that is not multiple choice. That is the definition of a performance-based question. Well, that means it could be anything. It could be a drag and drop question. It could be a matching question. It could be a fill in the blank question. It could be a question with multiple things that maybe there's multiple things. Maybe there's a fill in the blank and a drag and a drop. Think of any possible way that you could create a question that was not multiple choice, and you've now created a performance-based question. And I think what you're talking about, Martin, on this question is more than just the question. You're worrying about the style. You're worrying about how the question is being asked, but you're not worrying about the answers. It's the other way around. If you know the answers, if you know the content, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. If it's fill in the blank, I'll fill it in with what I know. If it's a matching question, I already know how this is matched up. I know from top to bottom. I know from fastest to slowest, or I know what format this should go into. But it's done. And maybe it's a drag and drop that puts it in there. Maybe it's a fill in the blank that puts it in there. Whatever it happens to be, if you know the content, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. Don't spend your time worrying, how are they going to ask it? Is it going to be a performance-based question? Is it going to be a fill in the blank? Is it going to be a drag and drop? Don't worry about that part. Do you know how the structure of that particular question is going to be? How do you know the topics associated with this? So let's do one of these. For example, let's go to the exam objectives. Here's how I do performance-based questions. And let's find one on this list, just a topic that is on this list. So here's a topics from section 2.4. Here we go. And this is the one, given a scenario, analyze indicators of malicious activity. So you've got a different malware attacks here. You got ransomware, Trojan, worm, spyware, bloatware, virus, keylogger, logic bomb, and rootkit. Well, maybe you get a matching question that lists out 4 or 5 different malware attacks, and it gives you a characteristic of that attack. This attack stole usernames and passwords and used those to log in and drain your bank account. Which one of these was probably the best description of that? I think a keylogger might be the one that fits best in that scenario. All right. Well, your network was infected over the weekend. Nobody was in the office, and yet every single system on Monday is now infected. Ooh, well, let's go through this. Oh, that sounds like a worm. So those are questions that are giving you, it's almost like having multiple choice questions, mini multiple choice questions, but sort of combined into a matching question scenario. That's a very common type on the exam. But you see how you knew the malware attacks. You knew all of these. You knew what the difference was between a worm and a keylogger. And you were able to answer that question, even though you had no idea what type of format that question was going to take. So that's the important part of performance-based questions. Do not try to study what the performance-based questions might be on an actual exam, because I guarantee you they will be different when you get to the exam anyway. And one of the most common types of feedback that I get for performance-based questions after someone has taken their exam, and this is not a violation of the candidate agreement, they come back and they say, oh, I really overstudied for the performance-based questions. The performance-based questions, I thought they were going to be way out there. They were very straightforward. They told me exactly what I should do. I knew the content straight away. They were much easier than I was expecting. Because the unknown allows us to create these crazy stories in our head. This fear of the unknown becomes almost insurmountable. It becomes an enormous thing, when in reality, it's really tiny. It was just, we think it's a boulder that we have to lift. In reality, it's just a tiny little rock. That's fine. Got it. Go to the next one. So don't worry yourself with performance-based questions. Don't think that you aren't going to be able to do it because you've never seen one before. That's not how this works. If you know the content, it doesn't matter how the questions are being asked of you. You will be able to answer them. And at the end of it, you will also probably be one of those folks that comes back and tells me, yeah, that was much easier than I thought it was going to be. Which I think is kind of my default when I start thinking about these exams, or really when I start thinking about any technical topic. I tend to run into these scenarios where I am so worried about learning that technical topic. Oh, we got a project where I got to learn this new thing. Oh, I don't know about this. It seems overwhelming. Let me learn more. Let me at least read the beginnings of it. And you start reading through and go, oh, is that it? Oh, okay. Oh, well, that wasn't so. That was much worse than I thought it was going to be. No, it was much easier than I thought it was going to be. That wasn't bad at all. You start getting so overwhelmed at the fear of not knowing that you don't realize it's easier than you probably considered. And the same thing I think applies to these performance-based questions. Don't overthink performance-based questions. Focus on the content. Go to the exam objectives, and I think you're going to be just fine. Let's do some more questions that you have on your list. The questions. Let's keep, here's one that is near and dear to my heart, Benjamin, who asks, what's some advice for people who are stuck in analysis paralysis, trying to decide the most optimal ways to study for Security Plus? The analysis paralysis is my standard state of mind. I have such problems getting over that hump sometimes. There's something I need to do. It's going to take a little bit of work to be able to parse out and format out exactly what I want to be able to do. Oh, let's do something else. Let's go to the next thing. And I spend so much time worrying about how I'm going to do the analysis that I never end up doing it, and therefore we're stuck. That's where the paralysis comes in. So this, of course, happens with more than just industry certification exams. It happens with almost anything in your life. You kind of have to work your way through this. And one of the ways that I do it is to see what other people are doing, and I copy them. That seems like something that sounds awful, but that's how most things work. You see someone else doing it, and you realize, well, let's see what process they chose. And let's see what they went through. And let's see if any of those resonate with me. One of the things about this question, by the way, I want to mention, you say, decide the most optimal way to study for Security Plus. So here we're going to set you free. There is no most optimal way to study for Security Plus. Ta-da! Done. We've already figured out where the problem is. There is not an optimal way for everybody. There might be an optimal way for you, but I suspect you already know what the optimal way to study is for you. I think you're probably, let's just answer a question. So I often tell people, get a good book, watch some videos, get some hands-on, and get some good practice questions at the end of it. Those are 4 important study pillars that we often will refer to at ProfessorMesser.com. We think those 4 will set you up the best for passing your exam. Now, there's other things you can do too that doesn't limit you to those 4, but those are 4 really important ones. And you might look at this and say, well, I'm challenged with reading. Maybe I'm not a good reader. Maybe you've got a little dyslexia. Maybe it's hard for you to sit with a book for long periods of time. You get a little antsy. Maybe videos work better for you. So instead, watch a video course. Watch my video course. Maybe you watch multiple video courses so you get a little bit of something from different people just to see if you've really got a good overall perspective of the data. Maybe you never touch a book. Some people will tell you, you must read a book. The book reading is something you have to do. 100% of you should be reading books, and it's simply not practical. Some people love reading books. I kind of like reading books when I study, so I get a good book, and I read the good book to study some of these technical topics. But if you start reading a very complex topic, you're in the middle of an OSPF book, and it's talking about how you would load balance in that scenario, and it gets very complex with some of the underlying settings. It's sometimes nice to see somebody configure it on the screen. So maybe you're doing both. For me, maybe that's the optimal way to do it. I jump between book and then video, and then back to book, and then back to video. Other people may not be able to do that. For them, that might not be optimal. But for me, that might be exactly what I need. So that is what I would probably recommend first, is try a couple different things. Try reading the book. Did it go better than you thought? Make a note. From 1 to 10, how good was that? That's about a 6 for me. A 6. I don't like that. Go watch a video course. Watch a couple videos. How did that go? Well, that was about an 8. I like that. Watch some of those. Okay. So now we sort of see where these different things sit, and we can start working our security tasks from there. Another thing I like to do, and you've probably seen me do this as part of our course. So we go to the exam objectives, and maybe in the section 2.4, you're up to 2.4. The first section is malware attacks. And the first thing is ransomware. Go read everything you can about ransomware. Watch my video on ransomware. Read information on the internet wiki page on ransomware. Go to a YouTube and watch a video on ransomware. Find every possible type of format that you would like to use and use that specific to ransomware. There are people that like to use AI for some of these topics. From a perspective of someone who is studying for an industry certification exam, I think that should probably be your last choice, because you're going to be asked about things that are real and accurate. And although AI has its place in certain aspects of things you will be doing in your career, being real and accurate is not a great asset of most AI engines. They're going to tell you wrong stuff all the time. And when you're studying for an industry certification exam, you don't really want to be told wrong stuff. You would really like to be accurate and true, because you'll be graded on how accurate and true you happen to be. So a lot of people, we go back and forth on this. I appreciate your cards and letters and the mean things you say to me about AI and the good things you say to me about AI. There's a time and a place for everything. There are places where any training materials excel. There are places where any training material does not excel. So make sure you understand the goods and the bads as you go through these different study types. You find the one that works best for you and ultimately is going to give you a passing score, or do the best job it can in getting you to that passing score. And I think you'll be fine. That's what I would recommend to do. And if you're someone who is working through studying for Network Plus, studying for Security Plus, studying for your CCNA, studying for your Palo Alto Network certification, studying for something with Amazon, it's going to be a similar format for you every time. You're going to want a book, you're going to want a video, you're going to want this, you're going to need that. Find the way that works best for you and just keep doing that over and over again. Don't stop yourself because you don't want to or you feel overwhelmed. This is IT. You're going to feel overwhelmed all the time. It's the nature of the beast because you can't know everything. Nobody in the world of IT knows everything about technology. Most cases, we don't even know everything about what we're supposed to know about technology with our current immediate job, much less all of the other things surrounding technology, because it's impossible. There's way too much coming at us. The industry changes way too much constantly that nobody knows everything. What you want to do is surround yourself with people that have expertise in certain areas so that you can work together and collaborate with those things. Those are the times when I've had the best success, is when somebody needs to know about protocol analysis, you come to me. Somebody needs to know about OSPF, you go to that guy. Somebody needs BGP expertise, you go to that person, because they're the expert on those pieces of it. So that's why I think it's important, is to really focus on the way that you feel comfortable. And the more comfortable you are, the better you're going to study, and the less of that analysis paralysis is going to be affecting you personally. Let's do some more questions. That was a good one, by the way. Thank you for submitting that. I feel that all the time. I can't tell you the number of times I've been, James, you're now doing that project. I don't know anything about that. Yep, you're going to need to start reading, because you're our point guy on that project. Okay, point guy, give it to me. Let's have this happen. And the more you get into it, the more you read into it, you call tech support and you get this manual and you read through these details, you realize, well, this isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be at all. Every time, consistently, this isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Why did I make myself crazy worrying about it? That's the problem, of course, with the fear of failure and the fear of the unknown. Eventually, you get to a point in your life where very little is going to make you afraid. So you just power through. So now's the best time to start. Just power through, and you're going to be in good shape for that. Let's keep going in this list of things. In this list, we got a lot to go through. So let's talk about this exam. One of the things you may have noticed in the exam objectives, bring this exam objectives back up. Let me bring up a multi-page view. We're going to go to the back of this document. Scroll, keep going. Back, here's section 5, domain 5, sections 1 through 5.1 through 5.6. And in the back, many of you may not even realize this, is the CompTIA Security Plus SY0-701 acronym list. The following is a list of acronyms that appears on the CompTIA Security Plus SY0-701 exam. Candidates are encouraged to review the complete list and attain a working knowledge of all listed acronyms as part of a comprehensive breakfast. Well, in this case, this is a lot of acronyms. So this is let me get rid of this. 1 page of acronyms, 2 more pages of acronyms, 2 more pages of acronyms, and 1.5 more pages of acronyms. There's a lot of acronyms there. I would not necessarily recommend learning every single one of these things as a separate task. I think you're going to learn most of these as you organically go through your course. For example, right here at the top, MDM is mobile device management. Well, no kidding. We learned about that in the video associated. I think the name of the video is literally called Mobile Device Management. And we talk in there, mobile device management, what we commonly refer to as MDM, does this for you. So a lot of the times people spending their time studying MDM, mobile device management. There's your flashcard. MDM, mobile device management. Mobile device management, MDM. Okay, got it. But what does that do? It's a device management for mobile. Now, you need to know what they are. So I would highly recommend that if you are going through this and sort of doing this flashcard thing with acronyms, which I feel probably is not incredibly important, you're going to learn these anyway as you go through the material. I think it's even more important that after you memorize MDM is mobile device management, that you also memorize as part of that mobile device management provides this functionality. You would use it in these scenarios. Here's how companies take advantage of mobile device management. There, you finally have memorized it. So it's more than just understanding what words are associated with those initials, those abbreviations. You really need to understand what is that. And that's really what the course is about. A good example, let's find a good example of this. There should be one in here that we can look through. So some of these are very obvious, but here's one. Maybe you get NAC stands for Network Access Control. Okay, what is that? What is network? Network? Is it? It's access controlling the network. You can't really tell what that is based on the initials and the name by themselves. So that's why I tell people, don't just spend your time memorizing NAC is network access control. Network access control is NAC. Done. Got it. Go on the next thing. Because as this question is already sort of spoken to, these questions we get about these topics, Andrew asks, will the exam list out the full acronym? Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't even use the abbreviation. A network administrator is installing a network access control system. And then they will ask you, what type of things will be associated with this? And they'll have a list. Denial of service, blocking vulnerabilities, 802.1x, this, that. Then what was the 802.1x that was on there? So I think if you're someone who's really working themselves into a bit of a challenge with acronyms and working through these details, you're only seeing part of the story. You're only seeing part of the configuration. You really need to get a breakdown of what those acronyms are referring to. And from my perspective, I look forward to your cards and letters telling me that they're not acronyms, which is partially true. But we call them acronyms, and I'm going to continue to call them that, even though in many cases they are not. It's kind of a weird thing in our industry. We're very focused on the details, very focused on accuracy, and sometimes we intentionally call something it isn't because that's just what we all call it. The world's a weird place. Next on our list, we got some time. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I got a couple more good questions in here, so I want to add those to our list. If you'd like to ask a question, you can always submit it at any time using the link on your screen, professormaster.com/QA. This one's interesting. I don't think I've answered this one before. This is from Jose, who says, I'd like to get a remote job, but I don't want to get scammed. Where should I start looking? Thanks, Professor. This is something we haven't really talked a lot about, but it is a huge problem if you're someone who is just trying to get their first job in technology. You go to LinkedIn, you post your resume, you start getting these messages what is LinkedIn? The in LinkedIn message. You get messages on your Facebook, messages on your X, messages in your email saying, we saw your resume, we got to talk to you, we got a great remote job for you. And a lot of these are not real at all. They are quite simply scams. They are there to cost you money during the process. Usually it's a check scam or some other type of gathering your personal information scam. All of these are well-known scams. If you ever want to list through what some of these are, read through a day of on Reddit, go to the Reddit/r/scams subreddit. That is a great subreddit. In a day, you will see practically every type of scam come up. I just stay subscribed to that one because occasionally a new scam will show itself and you'll learn something new about other ways that people are trying to manipulate you and the people around you. Jobs, people are trying to take advantage of you because people are so desperate to get that first job. And they will tell you, we'd love to have you aboard. Let's start you here. We'll send you a check. You can buy your stuff for your office. The problem, however, and the thing that really is a red flag with these is remote positions in IT tend to be for people that have a specialized knowledge. They work in a niche where no other type of person can fit. So if you are entry level in the world of IT, there are very few remote jobs available relative to someone who is very knowledgeable in a particular set of topics within IT. You tend to see more remote jobs as you become more knowledgeable and more have a longer tenure in this particular area in technology in general. For example, let's say you work for a wide area network provider. You work for an AT&T, a data provider, a Verizon, a T-Mobile of the world. They have some very complex networks with very intricate routing configurations, very intricate technologies they are doing, very unique, not very unique technologies because there's no such thing as very unique, but unique technologies that you generally do not see in a hospital or a manufacturing plant or a transportation company. These big technologies, big telecommunications companies have very enormous requirements for data transfer, more than practically anyone else in the world. So they have some very interesting and certainly unique technologies that they implement and how they implement it. So if you're someone who knows a lot about how those systems are designed, you know how to manage those systems, you know how to troubleshoot those systems, you know how to connect and build and plan for growth in those systems, you're probably doing pretty well for yourself. You probably did a good bit of cash. You're probably making some scratch. And you're probably someone who has the flexibility to be remote, because these components, these very interesting, these unique, these specialty systems are located in places around the world. They might be, there's some in Tokyo, there's some in Sydney, you've got some in San Francisco, in New York, in London, and in South Africa. Well, what are you supposed to do? Go, every time somebody has a problem, you stand up and you go to that country? Sorry, I got to go to Taiwan today. I got a problem with the system. No, you connect to it remotely from your desk. And because all of those systems are somewhere other than where you live, you might live in Orlando. Well, we don't have those systems in Orlando. We have them in Miami. We have them in London. We have them in New York. We have them in San Francisco. There's nowhere you can go to be closer to it. I guess you could hop on the train and go down to Miami if you're that close. But why would you when you connect and do everything you need to do remotely? Or if there's a problem, you can get a call with other smart people who know about these systems and talk about the problem. That's the type of job that is most commonly a remote support position. It's one where you really can't be local. Everything you're working on is remote. Therefore, you're probably going to be remote as well. There are people that I've worked with in Orlando for companies like this that do have an office, and they could go into the local office. Sometimes they need to perform certain functions on their local network, but most of the time they're able to VPN in. They're able to connect out to the server in Sydney. They're able to hit a jump server in New York and do all of their management remotely. So when you get into these situations where a lot of people are hitting you up for these jobs, you have to follow up. If you really think it's legitimate, you need to do your legwork, and you need to understand the scams that are out there so that when they say, we're going to hire you, you can work at home, and we're going to send you a check for $5,000 to set up your office. We budgeted you only for $2,500, so we need you to put that check in the bank, and then you can, whatever you don't spend, you can just send us a check for the difference. What could go wrong? That's not a scam at all. Until their check bounces because it was never legitimate, you've already sent them $2,500 of your own money. It's gone. And now you're left with whatever's left. This is a tragic, unfortunately, a tragic result of many of these scammy people that are doing these job postings. And it is horrible. It is heart-rendering. It's just, you don't want this to happen to anybody, especially someone who is in that vulnerable position of needing a job. I want to get that position. This sounds great. I can't believe this job came out of the sky. And I'm now, what? $2,500, where's my money? What happened to all my money? Happens all the time. Be very, very, very careful. There was one we saw very early on in the AI world where somebody was doing this through video. And of course, we want to see, is this a real person we're looking at? Is it an AI person? And they wanted them to hold 3 fingers in front of their face. See what happens with the AI rendering whenever they do that. Well, am I real? I think I'm real. Looks like I'm real behind that. So I think for the time being, your hand, 3 of your fingers are a great way to do this. So far you can trust that I really am who I am, at least to a degree. But these are things, sadly, that we now have to worry about. We now have to worry that the person we're visually talking to on our computer is not a real person. Thanks for that. What a great improvement to our lives these technologies have brought to us. That's definitely not a good one, but definitely keep your head on a swivel, do your legwork, trust. Well, you're trying to get a security position, trust nobody, trust nothing. That is the default state for someone in the world of IT security. So that's it. Am I real? These are all good questions. These are all valid questions. I mean, look at me. I know you look at me and you think he's just too attractive to be real. How could that be the case? But it is. I don't know what to tell you. That's just That's just how we are. That's just how things are here at the headquarters of Professor Musk. You can see this is a normal day for us. Let's keep going through this list. I don't want to hear, no, don't want to hear it. We're going with that. We're sticking to that story. Next on our list, I think we can fit a couple more in, right? We have more. We've got, so this is also a question I think a lot of you have about the study process. This is from Chris. Chris asks, as I'm studying, I'm getting mid 70% on your practice exams. What should I be getting prior to my exam date? I test this weekend. I think this is where a lot of people think as the practice exams is the end all be all for evaluating how well you will do on an actual exam. And it certainly gives you a direction. It's a data point, but it's not a complete view of what you know. Now, if you've seen our practice exams book, we have a little guide in the front, which is aptly named How to Use This Book. How to use the book right there. How do we use this book? How do we do that? Let's see if this is going to zoom. I tried to do an auto zoom on this. Hey, look at that. It's kind of doing it. How to use this book. And we give you some ideas about, how to use the book. What the best ways might be. And we give you a little grading scale. And I think the grading scale I have in here, right down here, says if you get over 90%, you're ready. If you get 80 to 90%, it's a strong showing. 70 to 80%, you're very close. Less than 70%, you probably need to do a little bit more work. Now, you're at mid-70s. We can't use that as a hard and fast rule, of course, but it does give us some perspective on how well you've learned the material. I think if your test is this weekend, I'm going to tie your questioning, Chris, with questions I get very often on the exam itself, which is, I got a week left before my exam. What should I be doing? And I cannot stress any stronger, and you're probably, I guess the word is sick of hearing it, that your best option is right there. The exam objectives are a phenomenal checklist. They will be able to tell you very quickly if you know this or if you don't know this. And here's how I would use it if I were you. This is one way. I told you there's lots of ways to study. There's lots of strategies. In fact, I kind of explained this, what's left when I explained this last time in a previous study group. So I went through every one of these bullets, and there's a lot of bullets. Let me just scroll for a second. Look at all these bullets. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics you need to know for this exam. Obviously, you're only going to get a maximum of 90 questions, so a lot of these will never appear on your exam, sadly, but that's just how industry exams work. So you start at the top. Let's go to the top, section 1.1, compare and contrast various types of security controls. There are categories like technical, managerial, operational, and physical. Now, in my case, I think I knew those pretty well. I could explain a technical category to someone or myself, what it was, and maybe things that were related to that. I could explain a managerial control. What's a managerial control do? How is that implemented? What is an operational control? How do I know if it's operational? What is a physical category of control? What would those look like? I felt like I knew those pretty well, so I marked them as green. Then I went to the control types themselves. I know what a preventive control type is. Really solid. I marked that one as green. Let me explain to you what a deterrent is. I sort of know what it is. I kind of understand the concept pretty well. It's hard for me to come up with an example. Let me mark that one as yellow. We're going to put that one in the middle. What's a detective security control? I don't recall ever seeing that ever. Detective. Is that a guy with a badge? How's that work? Detective. I don't know. I don't know it. We're going to mark it as red. Corrective. I sort of know it. We'll mark it as yellow. Compensating a directive. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to mark them as red. So in this first domain, section 1.1 of the first section of this domain, there are topics that I got cold. I'm not going to need to learn those anymore. The ones in yellow, I should probably get to eventually. But if I really wanted to start and have the best impact on my studies, grab everything in red and learn about those right now. Now just keep going. Go through the list. Go do it all the way through all of these topics. Go through the entire document. This is the objective document. You can find it at professormesser.com/objective. Objectives. I think both. But this is where you would go and mark everything as red, yellow, green. Now, maybe you're wanting to be more detailed. I think red, yellow, green for that particular function probably works pretty well. But if you wanted to assign it a number between 1 and 10, you could do that as well. Just find a method that works for you that will highlight the things you know the least about, so that you can then start learning the things you know the least about, which will give you the best possible chance of answering those questions should they come up on the exam. Because you might get a question about deterrent and you might get a question about detective. You might be able to limp through a question about deterrent because you marked it as yellow, but you're probably not going to get the detective question right. It's going to be a crapshoot. It's going to be a guess. It's going to be whatever, A, B, C, D, Christmas tree it, baby. Instead, if you then read a little bit about deterrent, you could remember, oh, I remember deterrence. I know what that's referring to. Let's see if we can answer this question based on what we know. So that's my approach to it. You might have a similar idea of things you can do, similar question about methods to make that happen. But I think that's a pretty good way to do it. And I think if you've only got a week left or less before your exam, then you should probably start on this right now. Just go through it tonight. You could do this in an hour because I did. I did mine in an hour. In fact, on mine, I am writing, yep, that was in the previous exam. That was in, oh, here's something new. I need to add that to my next course. Here's something new. We need to add that to the course. Here's something that was a previous exam. So it takes me about an hour to go through all of them. An hour of that time, well spent on the things you do. And don't cheat yourself. This is your chance to really be honest with what you know and what you don't know. Because the more honest you are, the better your studies are going to be, the more you'll know where to focus. And I think that's an important part as you become closer and closer and closer to that exam time. It's going to be important to do that. So let's go through this. There's some other things too. I've got some more in here. Let me see if I've got one of these on here. This is a pretty good question. So I'm back on my side. I'm going to try logging into my CompTIA account because I want to do some training with you very quick, which has been prompted of me. See if I can get into this list. I'm going to a lab view. So make sure this comes up okay. This is a question that came in from Brandy. Brandy asks, it's a fine question. You've talked about practical experience. We did a bunch of labs and a project in school where we set up firewall rules, network segmentation, assigning IP addresses, assigning VLANs. So good. Are these some of the things you mean? Well, certainly. Those are very good practical usage, practical implementation of these topics that we are learning in Security Plus. It's hard to have a practical lab as part of a video. I guess I could show you going through a lab, but that's not the same thing as you doing the lab. There's something about hands-on and drag and drop and using your keyboard and seeing it on the screen. There's something about that process to me that locks in a lot of these topics, just burns them into my synapse. It's in the brain now. It's stuck in there because you saw it, and you did it, and you were the one that put those wires together, and you were the one that changed that configuration, and you were able to watch what happened when you ran that command. So some of these things can be really, really useful. So I went over to CompTIA's learning platform. This is CertMaster Labs right here at the top. You can see it. This is available on my website. It's in our section for additional study materials. If you go to our website, there's a start here at the top of the Security Plus video, the Security Plus menu, and it's in there. The CertMaster Labs is in there. This is a set of labs that can teach you different topics. So they've kind of a summary here. So they give you a summary of the security topics, topic 1.1, and they kind of break down and show you, here's things you need to know about using, in this case, they take you through an exploration of the lab environment. But maybe you wanted to do, here's a live lab, perform system configuration gap analysis. We can start a lab in our browser. So you don't have to have a separate book. You don't have to have a separate set of equipment. You don't have to buy anything. This is a live lab, which means it is a virtual machine, and it gives you, we'll zoom up on this a little bit, gives you a scenario that you have to solve. It gives you the objectives, and then you can step through what to do. And it takes you step by step through everything we need to do. So kind of nice that we're able to make even typing things in it shows you exactly what to type. In fact, clicking things will help a lot. So there's a virtual machine that's going to load up. Back in the live labs themselves, there are other types of labs that are not the live virtual labs, but they are sort of standalone static labs. Those will load immediately and show up on the screen. If I thought we were going to be doing this, I would have already had it loaded. So there we go. We got our Hyper-V running. Let's put me up here, not down here. So this is a VM. This is a real Windows computer. There it is. This is not a simulation or an emulation of a Windows computer. It says connect to the PC-10 virtual machine. I just did that. Send a Control-Alt-Delete. It's got a little box around it up here. So when you click it, it just does it. Ever try to do a Control-Alt-Delete in a virtual environment? Not always easiest. It says sign in as admin. Notice it's currently signed in as Jamie. We're going to go to other user. I'm going to sign in as admin. And for password, I'm going to highlight that and click this password link right there. It fills it in for me and sign in. Click go. All right, that worked. And then since Jamie's, in fact, it tells you, since Jamie may be the default account, you must select other user. So it steps you through doing that. Okay, well, here we are on this system. Now what do we do? And it says, well, step 2, determine the build number for Windows Server 2019 running in the PC-10 virtual machine using WinVer. You might even, now you got it. You don't have to do any more with this. You may be able to go down to the search or to the menus that you want to find. I need a CMD. It's going to pop up some options for me. We'll click CMD and we'll do a WinVer. There we go, Windows Server. Now there's other ways to get to this screen. That's the one I chose. And since I'm in a virtual environment, you can use whatever process you'd like. They give you the option here. They say, go to search, type WinVer. I could have just typed WinVer from there. I did a CMD. In fact, I did it wrong. I did an extra step. So it's now showing me you could have been more efficient. You could have been better at doing that. Okay, I understand this is what I'm running. And then we go through the process. Here's lab files. We're setting up configurations. We're looking at files that are there. All of these things are designed to give you kind of a real-time perspective of what you can do in an environment like this. So this is CertMaster Labs. When you're done, this lab takes about an hour to go through, but when you're done, you can click Exit Lab, maybe save my progress and exit. Yes, let's save it. We'll come back to it. It'll be there for the next 7 days, and we can just pop next to that next time we are there. So if you look at the other labs that are here, they got tons of labs in here, just a lot. More assisted live labs. They've got tons of live labs in here. All these virtual environments to work through. So this is all part of CertMaster Labs. So if you're looking for a good lab-based environment, you can run it in your browser. You can click it at any time. You can use all of these settings. We have this on our website under, from the main screen, we can go to the security window, start security plus here, where I've got my study materials. But if you want CertMaster Labs, I've got CertMaster Labs right there. So CertMaster Labs, in fact, they're at a discount. All of the CertMaster products on my site are below the price that you would find on the CompTIA website. It's just another advantage we have of being a CertMaster Platinum partner is that everything that is CompTIA related, we're able to put a discount on it. So if you think those labs might be useful to you, we've got them right here, CompTIA CertMaster Labs. You could certainly buy them from the CompTIA website, but it's the same thing, and you're just paying too much. That is not limited by your location in the world, by the way. So you just buy them on the Professor Messer website. Let's see what the cost of labs is these days. Normally it's $210, $189. So you save more than $10. That's the wrong look. The numbers here aren't even right. So you save a lot more than 10. I'm glad I looked at that because that's completely wrong. That gives me something to do today. A little of my own homework to get there as we step through that. So if you're someone who just wants a little bit more hands-on, you want a little bit more, maybe somebody stepping you through the process to understand more about how do I do this? How do I apply VPN? How do I work with these technologies? Maybe that's the type of labs you use. And there's other types of labs out there. Find the one that you think would be the best. I like the CertMaster Labs, relatively low investment with just tons of labs that are there. So that's another thing you might want to think about doing. If you don't want to build a VPN tunnel yourself, go to one that's already predefined for you And much faster and much more efficiently, you've now learned everything you need to learn about VPNs, and now you can go to the next topic. Something that could help you follow the objectives, get plenty of books and videos to watch, get as much hands-on as you can. Labs is a great way to do it, and do some Q&A. After you've done all of those other things, save the Q&A for last. A lot of people like to jump in and use Q&A as their primary study material, and that's not the best, certainly not the most efficient way to do this, because the exam itself covers hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics. You need to know those topics, and only some of those, a subset of those, will be contained within any particular set of practice exams. No practice exams tell you everything you need to know about everything. You should probably focus on your deep knowledge with books and videos, move over to some hands-on, work some labs, save your questions for last. I think you'll be best prepared for what is ever going to show up during the actual exam itself. Well, there's plenty of overtime today. I apologize for talking and talking and talking, but I think we were able to make up some of that time in the after show. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for joining us in our first hour. We're not able to do this without your help, and having you there to be able to provide feedback and questions is so important to things we do. We love doing these live streams. It would not be the same if you weren't here. And if you're interested in joining us for the next one, make sure you check our calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll be able to keep track of when the next live event is going to be. There's a lot that we're doing going forward. So much happening with A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. You can always come back to our live streams to keep track of exactly what we're doing and how things are going in the world of IT. Thanks so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.